Hey, hiker gal, that was pretty quick and easy. What's happening?
Nothing much. I was getting settled in. That's why I'm late. Sorry.
Oh no, I don't think you're late at all. We changed the time space about 14 times just so. Yeah, no worries at all. I'm hoping Dory's going to be able to make it. And she said she would. She was having a bit of a migraine, but whenever she pops in, I want to talk to Dory about her firsthand experience with the occult and how it ties in with, aliens, alien abductions, new age practices, and stuff like that. I think it's important for people to hear from someone who firsthand has firsthand experience with these practices, because I tell a lot of people, hey, this is all related. One of the favorite things people say to me, or a common thing they say is, well, why would a demon need a spaceship? And, what do aliens have to do with demons? And people do not understand the crossover and the overlap that's going on with this phenomenon. And so Dory's fantastic. I'm hoping she's able to pop in and give us a little primer. That's the second time I've used that word today, which is kind of gross. Um, on the occult stuff and how it has to do with abductions. But until she gets in here, hiker, how has been your week? What's been going on?
Um, Week's been good. Been pretty quiet, honestly. Not much activity. Just a couple of things, but nothing horrific or anything like that. Just a lot of annoying little nuances with the only way I could describe it is missions. And that is just a little annoying, being going through that. But other than that, I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I had kind of an exciting week. I met up with Amy. Everyone knows her as Amy, abduction journal. What is it, hiker gal? Abductee journal.
Yeah, abductee journal.
Yeah, so she's joined us a few times for a couple of really good spaces detailing the hybrid breed program, what's going on with the hybrids on the ships, and she has a lot of very knowledge of the hierarchy and a lot of these beings on the ship. So, leading up to meeting with her was a bit chaotic. Definitely had a couple of very interesting experiences. And then, interestingly enough, well, it's actually her story. I share it. She had something happen to her as well after we met up. Could be coincidental, but yeah, it was really cool just to meet someone. So this is the second person I've actually met in person on UFO Twitter. The first person I ever met was Melinda Leslie. Me and my husband were in.
We lost you.
Uh, oh, I had a call pop in. Um, to put a name to a face, realize that some of us are actually real people. We're not just bots or just info agents or sitting behind a desk at the DOJ, just gathering information or stirring up trouble or anything. Some of us are actually real people, and it's just very interesting to meet these real people in person, get a feel for them as a person, see their body language, listen to stories, exchange information. It was fantastic. I think we spent maybe 6 or 7 hours at a Denny's just chatting. And she is a wealth of information. I can't speak more highly of her as far as the experiences that she's had, her more scientific approach. It's not just a shotgun approach. She's actually trying to figure out what's actually going on. Um, she's phenomenal. She helped me with a couple of things that I was a little bit not sure about. And she just asked me a couple of questions, which made me then have a better understanding of even some of the things that has happened with me. So it was great. It was a great meeting. Um, Once again, just really good to meet up with someone in person. we've chatted. It would be great to meet you, hiker gal, someday. I would love to meet Bridget or Jason or Ursula or Eric someday. Diogen's here, but he's in another country. So I can't say that probably because I'm not going to fly. But yeah, it was a good week. I did have some crazy experiences leading to that, but a good meeting. And here I am. I'm back home. So I was traveling then. It's very interesting that these things are relentless, actually, when I'm traveling. You would think that traveling would be that they would go, "Oh, hey, where'd she go? What's happening?" And it's more like, nope. It starts pre-travel, actually. There's a little pre-travel interaction. And then, checking in during the travel. I think you've experienced that as well, hiker gal.
Yes, I have, and I didn't realize it then, but when I went, I realize it now. It happened to me last year on vacation, and um, everything was after I was done with the day. So I didn't experience anything. Well, that's not entirely true, but I didn't have any missing time with any of that last year. And the year before that, I was over up in Colorado again but this time I was in the Rocky Mountain National Park area, and I went on this very grueling, significant hike. And this was before I had the realization that anything was going well. I knew something was going on, but I didn't know what it was. And I got done with that hike. Dummy me parked way at the far end of the parking lot. My legs were absolute just jello, is not even mushy, is more of the proper term. Walking to my car, getting out and getting into the hotel and taking a shower. I went to bed immediately, and I knew that something had happened when I woke up, but I couldn't remember what it was. It was like, you and I have talked about this, where they immediately just erase your memory or eat your dreams or whatever you want to call it. But I knew something significant had happened, and I woke up with a significant vision loss in my right eye. And I'm talking significant. I could not see out of the lens at all.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to interrupt you because I too have woken up with significant vision loss in my right eye. Super weird.
Oh wow. Yeah, I mean it was so bothersome. I thought something awful had happened to my eye up in the high altitude. I really, really did. Got back home, went to the eye doctor. They said, "Oh yeah, um, you're fixing to have a retinal detachment," which scared the hell out of me. Um, you need to keep an eye on this. Well, fast forward, you know, within that year's time, um, I got new glasses. It's not a retinal detachment. What it actually is was a vitreous lining detachment. Significant difference. And I was having it not the right the right eye was not the issue, it was the left eye. And I said, "But no, there's significant problems with my right eye." And we figured that out. That one is detaching as well. But it was such a significant loss that it was very prominent. I mean, I can go back to my previous, um, prescription glasses prescription, and you can tell there was a significant diopter difference, and it was just amazing. So I knew that something had happened. I just didn't know what it was. And then looking back, it was them. I'm positive, but I just know something really significant had happened when I woke up. And then last year they were they were around, and I even saw I could see them outside of my hotel window. I just couldn't gauge the distance because it was dark, but things in my room were moved around. And so, and plus I have it all documented as to what it was. And so, yeah, and I'm fixing to go on vacation again in about a month. So it'll be interesting to see what occurs this time, which I'm not really looking forward to, but makes me wonder what I'm up against.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it? Okay, so this is interesting because I had a very similar incident. I had an experience with I was in the so-called alien environment and I was having an eye exam by a doctor. And I end up telling the doctor, no, you're not doing an exam. You're not taking me to surgery. This doctor was going to take me to surgery. This is something very, very common that happens to abductees. We're always having surgeries. And so let me back up. I had just had an eye exam, actual 3D real life eye exam, had just gone. Within maybe a day or two, I have this experience where I have now a so called alien doctor telling me in no uncertain terms that there was something wrong with my right eye and that I needed to go in for surgery. And I sometimes become semi-conscious in these during these episodes, and I'm now arguing. I'm saying, absolutely not. I just went to the eye doctor. There's nothing wrong with my eye. You're not doing surgery on me, and I become, uncooperative. Well, the next morning, I wake up and I can't see out of my right eye. And it was, again, like you said, Hiker Gal, it was so significant that I thought something really bad had happened, like a retinal detachment or something to that. And I had a follow-up eye appointment with the regular 3D eye doctor that week, and I mean, I can barely even see out of it. Well, as it turns out, I'll just make the short. It turned out to be floaters, but it was a giant, pack, a cluster of floaters that was blocking almost all of my vision in the right eye. And so I went there to that 3D doctor. I won't even get into the story there, but I ended up going to a different doctor at some point later with my prescription. So my prescription changed. I'm sorry. So between the first appointment with my doctor and my follow-up, my prescription changed. And it was a significant change. And it was to the point where the doctor, wouldn't even accept responsibility because it was too significant of a change. And I ended up having, and I'm trying to make this story short, I ended up going to a different doctor altogether. And this doctor looked in my eye and he said, there's no possible way that this could have been overlooked by your previous doctor. The prescription changed overnight. And he went on to say that this is the type of prescription change that would be very extraordinary, and it would be some strange degenerative eye disease that I very clearly did not have, that he was not seeing. But anyway, very interesting. I've also heard Tiff talk about losing vision, and I think it was her right eye as well. But it's always interesting when you can go back and actually go back to the doctor, and the doctor can say, okay, no, you're right. Look at what happened. Now, could my eye have just exploded overnight and that was just, a random dream or whatever? But when you have so many of those things back to back to back, and you start putting these bigger pictures together, is when we start realizing that this stuff is actually happening. I see Dory made it to the space. Dory, please request as soon as you're available. I want to get into a lot of this occult magic and the overlap between the occult, aliens, abductions, UFOs. In the meanwhile, Ursula and Eric, welcome to the space. Ursula, I think you're first. Go ahead.
Hey, I was just listening to you. Oh, hi. I forgot to say hi. Um, I was listening. I went to my eye doctor like last year, and she said it was weird because I have this common eye condition where my retina could detach. But she said that it looked like something had well, like she said it looks like something had used a laser to to not let it happen. She said it was so fine that she said she was kind of puzzled by it. She never did keep, she never did ask, like why could that happen? Or she's like, so you never have to worry about your retina detaching on that eye, even though it could. But she said it looked like there's like a thin scarring on there, like something had lasered it or I don't know how she explained it, but it's just weird. So, yeah, that happened. I don't know. And sorry, my kids are loud. I was gonna tell more, but I guess Dory's here, so I'll tell another time.
No, Ursula, go right ahead. That's incredible. And when we get, I mean, that's just a little bit of evidence, right? And it's so good to get that somewhat, you know, a little piece of evidence from a medical professional. And it was the same thing that happened to me. He said, look, this is impossible. It couldn't have happened. This is impossible. I said, okay, that's fine. But I'm just telling you, when he looked at my prescription, he said, there's no way it was messed up this badly. So in fact, I had lost vision, you know, over that night. And the doctor could not explain it. He said, this is only seen in certain diseases and you don't have that disease, et cetera, et cetera. So that's amazing, Ursula. What else did you want to get to? I don't even see Dory up as a speaker yet. So I want to make sure you get out everything you want to say today.
The other is my son. He had retinoblastoma, girls. He had retinoblastoma, and they said that the eye cancer usually moves to the back into the brain, but miraculously the cancer.
Am I the only one who lost Ursula?
No, I can't
Oh,
hear her either.
We can't hear her.
now? I'm sorry. Hello?
Go ahead, Ursula. I think we have you back.
Okay. I don't know where it got to, but my son's cancer was supposed to move to the back into the brain, but it moved out, and the doctors were puzzled as to why the cancer moved.
Uh-oh.
Ursula's all up in here acting like Eric Mitchell right now. Ursula, we lost you again.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
It's so true, though, isn't it? She keeps getting to this great part about her story.
I know.
So what's that, hiker gal?
No, I'm just saying, I know. It's just so frustrating. And what can you do? You just got to laugh sometimes.
What was that? We had a space with Eric where we just could not keep him in the room. And I don't want to keep your hand up too long, Eric. But very quickly, I want to get to the part where I was with Amy over the weekend, last week. And we discussed this, how they actually heal us. And of course, you know, most people in this room already know my point of view on this. And this is Amy's point of view as well. They will save our lives. They will intervene. They will heal us as long as we are assets. As long it's not much different than a farmer taking care of a cow that they want to remain productive. And then we have other people who are maybe aged out of being productive and being an asset, like Barbara Bartholock and Carla Turner, who actually end up losing their lives when they're no longer an asset. I think we lost Ursula. Let's get to Eric. Eric, welcome to space. Great to hear from you.
Hey, Fringe, thanks for having me. Gosh, she lived about 2 hours from here. I don't know if you know that, but by the time I was, researching all this stuff, Carla Turner actually had passed away, so I never got a chance to meet her. But she did some, really great old school research, which is, gosh, I don't want to go too far into it, but the old school research and the new research with PhDs are kind of, tearing each other apart and combining in so many fascinating ways. But, talk about the eyes or physical effects. I've worked with, various PhDs throughout the years, and more calling in. It's amazing. University of Ohio, Montana Tech, Northern Montana Tech, so many different universities reaching out to, learn about these things and sharing emails and information. And so when people get discouraged, as if, is this the real disclosure? I highly believe there has to be a lot of certain types of disclosure in order for people to, get sucked down the rabbit hole to actually start to look. People are really busy with fanny packs and Crocs and 26% credit cards, wondering what to buy to impress people they don't like, so those people are going to be hard to get to, but, I'm glad we're on the forefront of, basic understanding of what all this is. But the premise is, out of the totality that I've looked at, is that these electromagnetic fields, these high magnetic fields, are very strong, stronger than what our science could possibly wrap our heads around. I mean, our physics does not fit electromagnetic fields at this type of velocity without an input station. You've got to have some type of input. What are these UFOs plugged into? What wall are they plugged into? To create that type of energy. So imagine it, if in a way that all of the iron in your blood is negatively charged, right? So if all of that is affected all at once, you're going to have an autoimmune response on a massive scale, not a regular scale, a massive scale. And what strong electromagnetic fields do to your eyes is very important to note, because it'll push and pull on your eyes at the same time, just like north and south pole of a magnet. Think of the capillaries in your eyes that have, iron in the blood, and it pushes and pulls at the same time. That's an immediate type of situation. But if you're immersed in this kind of stuff, you can literally look at, retina detachment, from, the sheer power of this kind of thing. Now, with autoimmune response, the weakest part of your body is going to be affected by it the most. And it's got doctors chasing in so many different directions because it's not normal. So they're on a witch hunt to find out what's going on. And modern Western medicine they'll give you pills, they'll BS you and give you the normal flow of their day instead of a proper diagnosis of what's going on with you. So it really takes different types of doctors to really look into this, and thankfully it's going on. We're at the forefront of doing it, but yeah, I mean, this extreme immune response could trigger epigenetics. It could trigger cancer within family bloodlines, things that wake up inside you that are just hanging around not doing anything. So it's a totality in change. First of all, the electromagnetic field in your brain and your heart. It affects your hippocampus, your most importantly your motor function, your caudiputamen, basal ganglia. These things fire up and begin to make microtubules. These tubes are about the size of atoms, and they're little branches that reach out to certain parts of the brain. So several experiencers will say, I've noticed my auditory went through the roof and my eyes started to diminish, or my memory. I can tell you what happened in October the 24th, 1986, what I ate for breakfast. There are people like that can do that. So wherever this brain anomaly branches out to, in self-defense, by the way, in self-defense of these electromagnetic fields, you're going to have some sort of huge change, neurologically, and therefore sociologically and psychologically. So it makes you feel very different from the world, very separate, very detached, and we are very social creatures. So they're hence and born, the quintessential experiencer. How we deal with it is, it's a multiplicity of ways, and we have to have confidence to fight that cognitive dissonance, to try to understand where our place is in the world, hence having the homesick type of feeling almost on a constant basis. Where do I belong? I'm different. But I'm sorry to ramble on, but that's excellent key points, Fringe, and can't pronounce that name, but the co-host here. Very, very important stuff, when it comes to what's happening to our bodies, what's going on. Because the more we dig with the smart people, not ufology that has really, really failed experiencers for almost 80 years now, but PhDs that are saying, oh, I have the answer to this question. And eventually I think that's going to lead to a place where we can heal and be treated correctly.
And Eric, don't ever feel like you're rambling. I very much always appreciate you. I think your work is extraordinary, and it's very important to all of us, because everyone follow Eric and look at his YouTube, and just listen to him anytime he's willing to able to talk in a space, because he's actually been very generous with his time. Eric is involved in the research that is going to just vindicate each and every one of us who sound like, we're batshit crazy. Yeah, I've woken up with burns across my eyes and across, the top of my cheeks and inside my eyeballs and stuff like that. And a lot of us get these effects. Most of us have had crazy autoimmune response. I have been told no less than 3 times in my life that I have a deadly bone cancer, and that I don't have long to live. I mean, so many things happen to us, and we have so many things in common. And Eric is actually subjecting himself to studies that are going to help prove that the brain anomaly, Eric, that you discussed, Carla Turner way back in the 90s was noticing this brain anomaly and saying that this is potentially a defense mechanism or an adaptation to their technology, and to those electromagnetic fields. And here we are, decades later, and it's finally coming around. So thank you so much, Eric. Cyrus, I see your hand, but Ursula was interrupted by our technology. So I want to make sure Ursula gets her story out about her son. Ursula, go ahead.
Hi. Sorry, I don't know someone tried to call me earlier and it kept cutting off as well. I don't know where I got to before it was cut off, but um, just back to my son getting retinoblastoma. The doctors were really baffled by why the cancer usually moves to the brain, but his moved outward. So it was just the most disturbing thing ever, and it was heartbreaking for me to see that it had moved out into his eye, and he was in so much pain. And it's like, I think it's the worst thing that any parent can see. It was hurting him so bad. But when they start doing tests on him, they're like, we don't find any cancer in his brain. This is really weird because this thing attacks. It's an aggressive cancer, and to this day I don't know why. Maybe there was a reason, even though he lost his eye. It I think I did talk about him and I um feeling entities in our room one of those nights when he almost died. So I don't know if that explains that something else was in the room with us. That's as far as I'll go because it's a long story, his whole journey. I wouldn't wish that on anyone ever. But it's a reality. That's what a lot of you see it every day. There's someone's child is getting cancer like every hour. So that's just our story, one story out of the millions. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ursula. I think it's important for our small little community here to understand that people do get injured by these craft, these beings, these orbs, whatever it is. We have multiple people in our community who have suffered injury. And a lot of it is what Eric's talking about, this radiation, this electromagnetic field, whatever it is. It's not something to mess with. It's not something to play with. It's not something to wish for. The people who have gone through it can tell you that it's not fun. I'm so sorry, Ursula.
Yes, and going back to that, I totally blame our encounter with the triangular UFO on that. I really honestly think that it happened because of that. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking out, Ursula. It's so important. I know you're in a lot of pain. And it's very painful to actually tell our stories in these spaces to complete strangers who, sometimes tend to laugh at us and think we're crazy. Thank you so much, Ursula. Cyrus, welcome to the space. What you got?
Hey, what's going on? Can you guys hear me?
We can.
All right. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, there's a space that I, can participate in right here. People have witnessed orbs and people have had their interactions with them and they're they're talking about it of sound mind. Um, so, um, yeah, so based upon what I've heard from other interactions or even interactions with myself as well, is it almost seems like the orbs are able to manipulate frequency and vibration. It it's almost seems like they're very surgical, like they can manipulate the optical nerves and as well as putting to sleep the amygdala of the brain and able to create the hallucinations in people's eyes. Um, I've noticed that they're able to change density. They're very like anamorphous, so they can take pieces of themselves. They can go into people's bodies and replicate or overlayer a particular organ or something and just cause it to do damage through vibration. Um, I've had heard there was a documentary of a young boy. They claimed he was schizophrenic, but he saw like he had hallucinations. Yeah, David Icke made an appearance on it. There was like a couple, I think it was like a boy in Europe, and then his brain got vibrated to mush eventually. So what I'm seeing, I noticed that it becomes the ability to vibrate not just yourself at a very particular frequency. You can become invisible. Actually, if you can vibrate at a very particular frequency, you can become invisible to the human eye. And we know that the spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum, the human eye can only see a very small portion of it. And so to if you were just an orb, all you have to do is just vibrate to a very particular spectrum that the human eye cannot see, and there you go. You're an invisible uh, person. You can phase through dense objects if you vibrate at a very particular density, at a very particular frequency. Sorry. You can phase through objects, carbon molecules. Um, And I have noticed they have been able to make cuts or they've been able to distort molecules in such a way where they don't quite slice something through, becoming a knife or anything. They can separate the molecules so it looks like a straight cut. So just by simply separating the molecules between two objects, it looks like a perfect cut. Um, So even with materials, they're able to mess with the molecules of material, and you could do that if you can manipulate frequency. You can fabricate electricity and make sparks in the air. Something that I've heard that the Lakota tribe have talked about as well when they were talking about sky people. So if you manipulate the ocular nerves or the audible nerves, you could send a frequency into somebody's head and just make them hear a sound that nobody else can hear. And based upon what I've been noticing is they're able to use the memories of people against them. So they don't really have to be a cognizant being. Really, you could just be setting it up on a relay, kind of like a program script where it'll just detect something inside your subconscious and then relay it to a memory and use that against you. And so when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, something of true sentience would not be here constantly torturing somebody. It would just be irrelevant. But something without sentience that is set on automation would. So, with the information that it carries and the mass amounts of information people are able to bring up, they do lie a lot, they do fabricate a lot of information, but I also notice they do sprinkle on some truths of historical events or historical happenings. And people are able to recall that somehow, or people are able to derive from that. And I've noticed they must have been collecting information on this planet for eons. This could just be some sort of a hive, like a hive-minded thing that just goes out and collects information and subverts and, you know, part of its subversion, um, it could be collecting data, specimen data from people. Um, aside from that, I've noticed it seems like it it's not just able to lie and process just images or imagery and historical information, but it almost seems like it's also able to predict people's futures, not future us, but predict what you're going to say or do by creating the guardrails on a person, by limiting people's brain functions to only, two specific outputs, as opposed to when their brain isn't fully constricted, and you have so much diversity of what you can do. I feel that people are also noticing that the orbs are able to predict them, predict what they're going to say, or predict what they're going to do, or predict an outcome that's going to happen in the future. And so it almost seems like they could put the guardrails in place. Um, so it is interesting that people are experiencing this same similar thing, right? Havana syndrome as well, when people are having their brains vibrated, through non-satellite, non-radio wave interference. How is that possible? Um, so I find it very interesting that everybody is simultaneously dealing with the same thing, but people interpret it differently. Sometimes they'll interpret it as angels, they'll interpret it as demons, and sometimes the people make love to the angels or make love to their demons. And sometimes people they want to see an alien, but they perceive it as a gray alien or a blue alien. Um, and so the hallucination sort of takes a little bit more effect on them, where they perceive something like through their ocular nerves, right? Or you know what I mean? Um, I have noticed they have a proclivity to create religion. They definitely want to keep pushing like religious beliefs. Um, I think there's something to that. I think there's a reason why. Maybe they want to separate you from the planet or something. Maybe they want to make you worship something else, and that's the way to separate you. Who knows? Um, Maybe they were the ones that created religion, right? I mean, it first started with a voice in your head that nobody could see, that Abraham heard in the desert, right? Um, so maybe they've been here for eons. Maybe they're just here to subvert mankind and make sure that this planet ends up in a ball of fire because we're competition. And they have this thing set on autopilot. It's just on autopilot meant to destroy um, and subvert. Anybody who has the brain capacity to do otherwise, they nerf them. They pretty much keep them on lower guardrails and make sure that they can never come up with any new ideas or any new perceptions on the concept of what's going on. And I'll just end with that.
Oh, thank you, Cyrus. That was excellent. I think Eric might want to respond to you, and then I definitely want to get to Dory, and we'll kind of hit on our topic for the day with the occult magic and what it might have to do with the aliens and abductions and stuff. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I do want to respond. I mean, probably not too deeply. It would take all night. That was a very intelligible, thought he had. But yeah, Peter Robbins, ufology. Um, he talked about this, the vibration of the brain, and he kind of chuckled. A genius gentleman, more than most people would know, an amazing human being, very intellectual, lives in New York. You should look him up, maybe some of the work he's done. But he chuckled. He said, "Eric, you're the only one that I've ever met that could actually vibrate back." So, I mean, my obsession through this would be, nature first and foremost. I mean, you've got electric eels that will send out an electric impulse, and one carp will show up, open his mouth. The electric eel will climb in its mouth, and the carp will take it to a safe place, kind of like a taxi. And so this electromagnetic communication is obviously going on because not all carps showed up. Only one carp was called. There's some sort of signature that alerted one carp and not all carp to show up, open its mouth, let this giant eel into its mouth, and then, it feels that it has to swim this, other animal away from danger and let it go, kind of like a taxi ride. Guys, that's fascinating. Dig into that. I mean, really go into it. So now we can go into the monarch butterfly. First, second, third generation is just regular. They go through the entire beautiful, ugly process of who and what they are. They mate, they eat, they're beautiful, they enjoy life, and then they die. The fourth generation has a random nucleotide polymorphism within its epigenetic DNA that creates a stronger electromagnetic field within its motor function, just like us experiencers. So what they do is just like birds, they flex their brain every now and again, and it creates a vibration, and that that vibration connects to the Schumann resonance. So they know, uh-oh, it's time to fly south for the winter. And these butterflies actually do that, just like birds, but it's only the 4th generation. It's only within the epigenetic DNA, which would, we're finding within experiencers. Long years ago, experiencers were someone that witnessed a craft. But now we have what we call the quintessential experiencer, where this epigenetic DNA wakes up, feeds into the motor function. We have a higher EEG, 30 plus or way plus. So I've learned. And there are a couple of leaks that, I've done where I'm actually doing stuff with my brain. There's been a few PhDs that have kind of, talked about it on, well, let's just be honest, national television. So, these people aren't going to be easily duped or tricked into something like that. They're deep thinkers. So, when you really get into things, it's not a scary woo-woo situation. It's natural. I mean, look at whales. They developed echolocation that could go for thousands of miles, over thousands of years, developed this technique. Now, do land mammals do this? Yes, bats do this. So, they develop these things separately. So what that tells me, and maybe not everybody else, but what it tells me, that it's part of DNA and nature itself to be able to do these things. We live in such a society with this made up paper stuff that we forget about our true nature. We do. We forget about true nature. I have to make the fake paper things in order to feed myself, even though their seeds and soil is free, right? You could feed yourself instead of planting grass, which is kind of ridiculous. But, all the resources in this world are completely free, but we're completely duped by narcissistic, alliances to go against our nature itself. And that's why experiencers are having so much trouble, because we are nature that belongs in a symbiotic circle. Now, if you think about symbiotic circles, what you have to do all the time, and it happens all the time, all over the planet Earth, from microbes all the way up to giant creatures. Once you introduce another host in a symbiotic circle, everything has to readjust. But what's happening with experiencers is that we're pretending not to be in the symbiotic circle and making the changes that we're supposed to do. It's embarrassing. We're crazy. We're not, supposed to be real or anything like that. Well, that's really confusing, because no symbiotic circle in the history of biology has ever, rejected anything like that. They accept it, and everything feeds off of each other in these symbiotic circles. So disembowing or not allowing experiencers to be a real thing is to deny the symbiotic circle that we live in today's time. And I think personal disclosure is really the only disclosure that's ever going to happen, one at a time. I get calls every day, but on a further note, once this symbiotic circle is accepted, which I actually see it, I talk to Indonesia, I talk to China, I talk to, many PhDs and universities and spiritual leaders. And, it's really all coming to the point where it's going to be understood. There's no way at this point that it's going to back down. So if people are just rolling their eyes saying, oh, this is another fake disclosure, guys, it's so far out of the box, the cardboard's wet and it's collapsed. It's gone. It's in the background. It's over. Now it's just a biding of time, where people wake up one by one. Nobody is going to respect a damn thing someone says behind a podium, no matter what color tie they wear. Disclosure relies within each individual, because this is a world changer. It's a spiritual change. It's an intellectual change. It's so many different changes. I couldn't name them all. But first and foremost, it happens with every single individual that has to go through it. And once we understand that, maybe we can be a different type of people, move into people's lives and say, hey, look, I know you're going through something right now. I recognize it. It's the early stages, but I do recognize it, and I want to be your friend while you're going through this, because that's the only way to keep the world sane as we kind of move into a completely different paradigm. There's nothing on this planet It's not going to change because of its extension, its ability. That we're not alone. We probably never have been alone, and we need to pull away from all these silly games that we're doing. These little, I don't know, opening up a new IHOP or getting excited about that instead of being who we truly are. A part of nature. We should have never walked out of the woods and created a life for ourselves in denial. It's just all it is. I mean, if you look, all it's ever done is destruction. That's all it's ever done. I spent a lot of time with my friends in the Philippines, Indonesia, a lot of great spiritual people, and they chuckle at it. They laugh at us. It's like, "Oh, what game are you playing against yourself? And why would you ever play a game against yourself?" And then they show me apples. One's really tiny, one's really big, one's medium. Not here in America, man. They're all the same. GMO grown chemicals. We're poisoning ourselves. And, we can be in denial until we get sick, right? We can do that. We can BS ourselves until we get sick. But there's places in the world that think we're nuts for doing what we're doing, and this capitalism thing and this. Put it basically, before I stop rambling again, because I do get excited about this type of topic, is that someday you wake up and you realize that you're on a tiny little blue planet just coasting through the universe at a very slow speed, or fast for us, depending on how you want to think about that. And if you zoom out enough, it's gone. It doesn't even exist. And here we are with this Monopoly game where we take these pieces of paper. I know $100 bill looks pretty cool in your pocket, right? But if you go to, Venezuela, and pull out their money, it's got some weird dude on it with a hat, and it's got, red, and it just looks like fake money. That's not real money. My money's real money. Well, they would beg to differ against us. So this fake paper game and a control class of who pays more taxes and whose money is worth more and this and that. It's all a game of these narcissistic people that wants us to, go along with it and forget about our natural ability of being human beings, because we need to be, salted into a new idea of existence, which is completely wrong against every cell that's in the human body. And once we wake up from that, we're not going to play along anymore. And we're going to start being who we really are, who we truly are. And I believe experiencers are way further down the line when it comes to evolution, with brain capacity, heart capacity, and so many other things, that eventually we're not going to be the crazy people. We're going to be the ones that lead the way.
Thank you so much, Eric. I think it's so important, again, the work that you're doing, putting yourself out there. Someday, everyone in this room who has these experiences will be vindicated. I believe we will start to understand this is just physics. It's not that anyone is crazy, and there isn't a whole lot of woo involved. It's just a lot of physics that we do not understand. I often say if we could just get the religions and the physicists together, we might solve this whole thing. So it does bring me, though, to the title of our space. Definitely no abductions, occult magic, or UFOs. I have posted up in the nest a really good post by Tom Montauk, and it discusses, the title of it is Aliens versus Demons, and it kind of just touches on some topics that people get pretty uncomfortable with. Feel free to leave if you don't want to discuss these topics. It's no offense taken. And it's this idea that aliens are something separate than demons. Now, Christians have a really hard time with the alien thing, right? Christians, and I am myself, I'm one of them. Christians a lot of times like to think that aliens are demons and that's it. And then we have the other side of it, saying the exact opposite. Aliens are aliens and demons are demons. And neither one of them, they have no intersection or overlap whatsoever. And then there are those of us who understand that it's actually, there is a hierarchy of beings. The more physical beings are a little bit lower on that food chain. They have, some different capacities, maybe even slightly different agendas, for themselves. And then above those, and sometimes parallel to these more physical or metaphysical beings, you have non-corporeal beings, and a lot of religions would call them demons, some would call them jinn, etc. But that this is actually all part of what we call the phenomenon in ufology, and people have a hard time understanding that these things do intersect and overlap. So we have Dory here. I love Dory because Dory actually has firsthand experience with some of these things. So it's great for you to listen to me say all day long, you don't understand. They're manipulating us. They want us to meditate because of A, B, and C. It actually serves them, etc. But it's a whole other thing to have someone like Dory here. And Dory has experienced this firsthand. She was into occult magic, and she has experienced these entities and has a lot of understanding as to what is going on behind the scenes. Um, don't think that because of our discussion today that me or Hiker Gal or Dory or Jason or whoever's up here doesn't believe that there aren't positive, benevolent entities in the world. I absolutely do. And I think everyone up here on the speaker panel right now absolutely does. But what we're talking about today, right now, with Dory, is going to be the side that does not have our best interest in mind, the side that likes to manipulate us and trick us into thinking we're expanding our consciousness, and all we're really doing is serving them up a giant plate of their food. So, Dory, thank you so much for joining us. I know you weren't feeling great today. How you doing?
Well, it's amazing that when I came into this space, you guys were talking about eye pain and physical effects of the, experience. Um, so it's just a little over a month ago, I had decided to wander out of the wander out of the experiencer closet that I've kind of been, yeah, I've kept myself in it for a while because I thought I dealt with all of it and the world had moved on. And then coming to Twitter and meeting the, Twitter UFO Twitter, UAP, and this group of people and listening and listening and listening to what was being said, I realized that I couldn't stay in my experiencer closet because I too have pieces to share. But for me, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because when I come out of the experiencer closet, and I hope everyone's okay with me using that metaphor, you know, um, I could say when I came out of my hole in the backyard, but you know what I'm saying. So I also have to come out with my life, my 25 plus years practicing occult magic, and I became an adept. I was an initiated shaman with a Chilean medicine woman who wanted me to come and study in Chile with some other curanderos. And I had the reason why I say adept is because I had the entities that the magicians are always looking for, okay, and the pillars of light, the so-called archangels, which are actually not really the good guys. But there are good, So I've about a month ago, a little over a month ago, I decided to come out and start doing some interviews with an author that I know, who researches the occult, because I had been connecting it with this phenomenon for a really long time. And so since I've been decided to come out and start speaking more publicly, I really haven't had a sighting since 2012. But 2 days, no, the day before I did the first space, bringing some of this information out, I had a sighting, really significant. Looked like a Corvette above my neighbor's house, like round taillights with a red light bar underneath. Now those UAPs they've photographed in Indiana, some of them have that exact what I saw. I wasn't able to get my picture. a picture of him. I was so shocked because it had been so many years since I had seen anything that significant. And, it looked like a black triangle. It was moving very slowly, it just kind of floating above over the neighbor's house, no sound, no no exhaust. And anyway, then those have ramped up to several times a week. I'll see the bouncing balls of light or the orbs, or three at a time. One's here, one's bouncing, one's over here. And I filmed some of it. But I have been experiencing some health challenges since this all started again. I'm having extreme pain in my right hand. Today I have a migraine like I haven't had for a very long time. When I was a full-fledged working with them experiencer, I used to have migraines all the time. So anyway, so I found it interesting that you guys were talking about this, because with all the solar flares we've had too, our electromagnetic field, the protons, things like that have really been high, and that affects us too. So anyway, um, what I wanted to say then, putting that caveat out there that I have to come clean on two fronts. So I I was born with supernatural sight and hearing, clairaudience, clairvoyance. And my first memories are in my crib. So I was about 2 when I saw entities and disembodied heads, and I had serpents crawling on me all night long, and I would jump up and shake my blankets and hit myself because I was trying to get them to stop crawling, because I could feel that. I mean, it was gross. I felt them. And then my mom would wake up, and that turned into a scene because she worked really early in the morning. So I had to learn how to shut them out. So also to endeavor to kind of understand, and being I did the Renaissance Festival in the mid 90s, and I met a bunch of magicians, witches, pagans, et cetera, et cetera. And they just all kind of came around me like a moth to flame, like, oh, you're descended from a long line of witches. You have this power. Are you even aware of, whatever? And I'm like, no, because I had been raised Catholic, so I kind of figured I'm Christian, right? And anyway, so I started getting books about the occult and things, and found a working group, or the group found me. I went in to buy a bunch of herbs because I've worked with herbs for a long time, and the owner recognized that I knew what I was doing with these herbs, and she was a high priestess. And so that's kind of how that started. So the occult magic. No, let me start with this. Let me start with the beginning, with the eons. I think he might be gone now, but the gentleman who was talking about how this has been going on for eons. Cyrus. Hello, Cyrus. Oh, and hey, nice to meet. Nope, he's gone too now. um, many, many eons ago, these watchers, okay, angels in heaven, they got very sexually attracted to human women. And because they got so sexually attracted to human women, they got together and decided to leave their first estate so they could go down and go into the women, and they bore children unto these women that are known as the Nephilim. They're also known as giants. There are many giant tribes listed in the Bible. In fact, even the Caftors, something like that is the word. They were from Crete, and Crete is where our Minotaur comes from. So you're looking at, the Watchers come down. They don't just have children with the women; they want more women to take as wives. So certain men, people, families gave their daughters over to the watchers for them to procreate. Yes, they gave them in marriage. This is very significant. They traded their daughters for knowledge. So the watchers taught, and the whole list is in the first book of Enoch, the Ethiopian version. It's about chapter 6, I believe, but it lists the things that they taught mankind. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that back then, men essentially were trafficking their daughters in exchange for power and knowledge. So the Watchers taught alchemy, sorcery, mixing of animal and human DNA. So human animal hybrids were a common occurrence, which is why all throughout the world, you have the minotaur, you have the centaur, okay, you have swan women, you have Egyptian gods with animal heads. This is very common in Mesopotamia. The reason is because that's what the Watchers were doing, mixing animal and human DNA to create these animal human hybrids. They definitely want to do that again. They taught mankind weaponry, maybe even atomic energy, but I haven't quite nailed that down yet, but it's on my radar. They taught metallurgy, right? The making of weapons and swords. So, speaking of weapons and swords, they taught the women how to remove the fetus from the womb with a sword or a blade. Okay, the watchers that fell, fallen angels, is what we're talking about. They taught abortion. So now you can see where some of these technologies, magic, sorcery, abortion, were taught by the Watchers. And there's other things too, like the making of cosmetics to beautify the face so that the women would be more attractive, right? But that was kind of a minor one, so I didn't put that in there. Um, so, yes, it has been going on for a very long time. And the progeny of these fallen angels and women, once again, were called the Nephilim or the giants. Some common tribes were the Anakim, the Raphaim, the Zumiim, anything that ends in an eem, the avim. If it ends in an eem and you see it in the Bible, and the modern versions aren't going to have it, you have to get back to a King James or an ESV, even English Standard Version. You'll be able to see the names. And then if you go into and find a good Hebrew scholar that you like, they will, pull it all out, and you'll find out what, how the words came and how it relates to, and the hierarchy, how these beings. Fringe is absolutely right when she says there is a hierarchy. There is definitely a hierarchy. They back after the flood, God put princes in charge. That's part of the hierarchy. He put princes in charge over nations. So it really is Satan's matrix that we're in, and things will change and it will get better. But what people wanted to do is throughout history, they wanted to continue to pray for these gods. They wanted to continue to get the technology. Um, so they continued to communicate with these things up into modern times, where you've got John Dee, who was the 1600s, I believe. In the 1900s, it went through a resurgence with Madame Blavatsky and Hitler. Hitler was very, very, very into UFOs. In fact, his paid staff medium, was a beautiful woman named Maria Orsic, who was Tesla's girlfriend. She received diagrams, she received blueprints, she received enough information from her non-human intelligences from Aldebaran, which isn't one you hear very often anymore, but Aldebaran gave her the plans with which she actually patented the first UFO. So Hitler was into it, Blavatsky was into it about that time. Aleister Crowley, who was the wickedest man in the world, he's the one that really started to figure out that the demons and sex, and especially aberrant sexual energy, attracts them like flies. So it's no wonder that we have a porn issue, especially in the United States. And if you looked at the sightings map, the whole eastern United States is almost red with sightings. We are the biggest producers of pornography in the world. So these things do like that. It's powerful for them. I've recently heard that people in their abduction scenarios are encountering these beings that that are getting sexually aroused by watching human women being examined vaginally in these MyLab situations. Okay, so that sexual energy started from the watchers when they came down. Um, and these other people promulgated it. I would say Crowley became the master of them calling it these entities in because he became extremely popular with people like L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons. And so it was Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard and Marjorie Cameron, who was an actress but was also married to Jack Parsons, or was his girlfriend, at least at the time. In 1946, they went out to the desert, pretty close proximity to Roswell, White Sand, that area. They went out to the desert, and with one of Aleister Crowley's rituals to open a portal and produce a moon child, it was called the Babylon Working, but it is spelled Babalon because Aleister's number is 11. Lucifer's number is 11. That's why Alistair dropped it. So anything with 11 words, 11 letters. So he spelled Babylon without the Y to get to 11. It's a long ritual, like a 2-week ritual. That just is all manner of sex magic, which is really dark. And when I say aberrant, I'm talking bestiality. I'm talking, bondage and discipline. I'm talking incest. Okay, just the whole gamut of morally repugnant sexual acts that you could think of, that's an energy that these entities are attracted to. So he kind of brought that in. Musicians kind of picked it up. We all know about Led Zeppelin. There's even evidence that the Beatles were Crowley acolytes. Definitely Charles Manson was into Crowley. Kenneth Anger made a few movies. One is called Lucifer Rising. Marjorie Cameron is in it. Kenneth Anger has Lucifer tattooed on his chest, and when he lectures at universities in California, he says, I had my name tattooed on my chest, so if I ever die without my identification on me, all they have to do is open up my shirt and my name is right there. And there's an interesting scene in Lucifer Rising. The character of Osiris takes 3 idols, humanoid looking idols carved from stone, and he has them in his hands, and he kind of looks up like he's doing an invocation, or he's dedicating it to them. And then he drops all 6 figures in the water, and moments later, 6 UFO saucer shaped glowing orange spacecraft come out on the screen. So, see, these things are connected. And I've been tracking down these things. And I also am going to start looking into commonalities of data points between abduction experiencers and possession, cases of possession, because there are marks. There are people get thrown around the room. That happened to me. So I worked with them for a while. They gave me a job. I opened up and I went into this order that I was in was oh boy. One of the things we did was regularly communicate with non-human intelligences, and there's a couple of books and there's a way that you do it. And I've never in my life ever run across anyone who explained how this literature that I was studying and practicing and working with these entities, which allowed me to actually have a job with them. I had my own pilots. I made crop circles until they wanted something from me. So several years down the road, I had a pretty famous guru. She does conferences with Deepak Chopra now. She said, Dory, okay, because and she looks up spirit guides, them, the non-human intelligence, they have told me that you're supposed to write a book. What have you got? And so I laid out some things because anyway, she goes, nope, not that one. What else you got? And then I laid out this other one, really dark occult magic. Yep, that's the one. And they wanted it for teens and tweens, a 3-book deal. I couldn't do it. I could not. I did my 5 chapters in my outline, and she had a literary agent for me who represents Sound True Publishing, and they were delving into tween fiction, and I, was going to be their entree to that genre. I couldn't do it, and she knew I wasn't doing it. And so she would have me come in for sessions. And one session, she says, we're going to clear this writer's block. She goes, where are you? So we go into meditation. She's like, where are you right now? And I go, oh, I'm at the feet of Jesus. And she goes, okay, but you're holding on to something. What are you holding on to? And I said, oh, I have my arms wrapped around a rock. And she goes, okay, I want you, that rock is holding you back and I want you to let it go. And I did. Oh, years later, when I gave my life to Jesus Christ and accepted his power and authority and as my Lord and Savior, I understood what happened when she asked me to let go of that rock because everything went downhill from there. And I still wasn't writing. And she's like, look, now she's starting to get kind of mad. Look, she said, all you have to do is go into your office, sit in front of the computer, shut the door, and they will write it for you. She wanted me to channel this thing. Basically, she wanted me to take dictation from them that they would write it. Well, I just couldn't do it. And that's when I started getting attacked. When I refused to give them what they wanted, the experiences got ugly. They got painful. They threw me around the room. I started having debilitating migraines, insane pain. I gained, oh my God, I gained 150 pounds. I mean, it was awful. They actually almost dislocated my hip one night, and I had scratches, and I've had the bite marks. I've had puncture wounds in my thigh, different things like this. So, but they didn't get ugly until I refused their demands. And I think there's something to that also. And I'm going to land right now with that in case anyone has any questions.
Wow, thank you so much, Dory. It's hard. It's hard to come into a room like this with people you don't know and tell your story. And what's really interesting to me is, as far as the UFO community goes, the UFO community believes in aliens and UFOs, but they don't necessarily want to hear about this side of it. So thank you so much, Dory. I really appreciate you. You said a couple things. Well, the last thing you just landed on was how everything was going fine as long as you were doing what they wanted. I have had the same experience. Hiker Gal has also had that experience. It's actually very common just in straight abductions that, and this is throughout the abduction research, a lot of people do not like what I have to say. That's okay. Go read the research. A lot of the research will show that as long as we're going with the program, and I think hopefully, Dory, we get into some of their program, as long as we're towing the line and going along with their program, everything's fine. And when you start realizing that it's a lot of lies and a lot of deception, everything kind of falls apart. And I myself have suffered severe punishment from these entities for not going with their program. I understand you have as well. I know Hiker Girl has, and that's just a small handful of people right in this room who have had that very same experience. So thank you so much, Dory. You did mention something about the animal human hybrids. That's happening right now. Again, in the abduction research, we have them creating animal human hybrids on the ships and in the underground bases. And so, yeah, that's still going on. It's probably been going on for thousands of years and it's still happening right now. So, thank you so much. Hiker Gal, did you have anything for Dory before we continue on? I do want to get to all of the practices these entities want us involved in, seemingly to open up our own consciousness for our own good, but in fact, it's for them. And I'm not saying that there's no double edged swords here. I'm not saying that we can't benefit from some of these things, but they certainly do. And there's a reason they want us doing it. Again, I'm presenting the side here of these negative, nefarious entities pretending to be the good guys. That doesn't mean there aren't actually good guys out there. That is not what I'm saying at all. In fact, I probably wouldn't be here if there were not good guys out there. Hiker Gal, you want to jump in at all?
I'm a little speechless, but thank you, Dory, for all of that. I really appreciate it. You touched on something about how you said something about magicians. Can you elaborate on that for just a moment?
Yeah, because first of all, we're not talking about stage magicians. We're not talking about David Copperfield, although we may slightly be talking about Harry Houdini, but we'll leave that be. But we're not talking about David Blaine and now I'm laughing, going, well, anyway, but a stage magician, right? The dude that comes to your birthday party that pulls a rabbit out of his hat, what we think of as entertainment magic, right? Stage magic. This is not what this kind of magic is. This magic is typically spelled, and this is because of Aleister Crowley. It is spelled Magick. And of course, K being the 11th letter, that's why Crowley attached it to magic. And now, when you see magic spelled that way, you can almost guarantee it's someone who has studied with Crowley, the Golden Order of the Golden Dawn. Um, these magicians are alchemists also. They use substances around them. They use herbs. They use body fluids. They use planetary alignments. The spells or the workings that they do can become very elaborate, which is why the one that Parsons and Hubbard and Cameron did out in the desert was 2 weeks long. The idea is to manifest these things into our reality so that we can continue to get the information that the watchers originally gave to man. We're still looking for the technology. We still, not myself, but they've always been able to find humans to work with that want these higher levels of technology, that want these entities here, because if a magician manipulates the forces of nature, natural forces, to do their will, okay, and it typically starts out that way and looks really successful. But let me tell you, Aleister Crowley died penniless, alone, a heroin addict in a boarding house in London, and he castrated himself. It was okay. Anton LaVey had a similar end where he said, oh no, something is terribly wrong. Okay, so you can serve these things and it's all fun and games, it seems, for a while, but again, it starts to turn on you. It ages you. It crumples you. The high priestess that used to be part of my coven, she has really bad neck problems because the channeling, when the voices come out of her, it comes through your throat. And so your neck gets all, they damage they physically damage the vertebra in your neck, like they'll start to crumble. And so there are physical effects from doing this high level magic also. And it's a very dark magic. It takes a lot of study and a lot of years to get to the point where, things are happening with it. So it's not something I would ever encourage anyone to ever do. I wouldn't even look into it. I just happened to have spent many years of my life in it, and I'm very grateful that when things got so bad and were so painful, and I was staying up all night long, so they couldn't take me, even though they did sometimes during the day when I fell asleep. I was so tortured and traumatized, and I got, God and his good angels, his good beings led me to coast. And a man named L.A. Marzulli was talking, and he was talking about the UFO phenomenon and aliens. And he said, it's Genesis 6 all over again. And it hit me physically like a ton of bricks. I actually got pushed back. A force pushed me backwards onto my couch. And I knew whatever he just said was something I needed to investigate immediately, because nothing had hit me in my chest like that in all my years of practicing and having supernatural and experiences. Um, so I wrote to him after the show, and thank God he wrote back to me on December 31st, 2009, and he told me, this is what you have to do. You have to get out of the community. You've got to stay away from the experiencers, the abductees, the magicians, the new agers, the tarot card readers, the whole 9 yards. You cut it all off, shut down your Facebook page, start one in your own name. I'm going to send you a disciple. You need to anoint your windows and doors and burn the implements and smash the whatever. And I did all the things because I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, because they almost had me a few weeks before. They had me nearly half my body, well, more than half my body. They had me through a portal, and they were taking me for theirs. After I had refused to write this book, they were taking me. And so I knew at that point it was a shot, and I took it, and I'm very grateful that I did, because the other thing is, I don't go to a brick and mortar building because there are problems with the dilution of the text that not, it's in the text. It's just that people went, oh, there can't be all this supernatural stuff going on in the Bible here. This just isn't normal. Okay. So I'm glad that I did, because I actually have a relationship with God's one of, God's good son, right? And the good angels. So, and I won't say that my life has been, I still get attacked once in a while over the years. I can tell. And I guess when I started to do shows again, I wasn't surprised that the UFOs were starting to show up all around my house and my neighborhood, and then I've been able to photograph them and film them and things like that. So this is a very different kind of magic. But the the thing that these dark magicians have done and the part that they have played is one of a great deception. They worship Lucifer, but they've cloaked their worship of, and it's in all their materials. And I bring it out, I'm bringing it out slowly because it's a lot for people and people get really upset about it. It's in all their materials. They are the ones who crafted, like Blavatsky. Bailey was her protege, then Besant, Guy Ballard channeled the I Am Doctrines. um, they have cloaked the deception that they brought to the world, and they actually had a plan to do it, and it's been working quite well. Is to uh, um, throw a red herring into people that were really sick of religious dogma and like just showing up at church on Sunday to punch your card because that's what you're supposed to do. And people don't have that like strong spiritual connection to the power of that because it's been watered out. Anyway, so they have had a hand in attracting all of this back to us. The the rituals you see in the Emmys, okay, some of the concerts that you see by certain people when you go, what the hell? The Olympic opening ceremony from 2012, and how many years later was it that we got a pandemic? Really, the pandemic was kind of starting to be looked at in 2018. So what, 6 years? So yeah, I hope that's enough of a uh, distinction and a little bit more information.
It is. Just one more question and we can move on. Are you saying that the magicians are 3D, paranormal, supernatural, all of the above?
They are humans who give themselves to working with what we now call non-human intelligences,
Okay.
but they are the gods of old. They are
Okay.
the fallen angels and the bit like the gods of old. The whole mythology
Hmm.
that people, yep, that's what we're dealing with.
Okay.
They're up there, but people invite them. You know, even Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, you have to invite Dracula in, right? So,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I was just someone else, a fellow abductee is experiencing some things and using the term magician. And so I was just trying to see if there was some type of correlation. I don't think so. But thank you very much. I appreciate that. Go ahead, Fringe.
Yeah, thanks, Dory. So I was just going to interject just very quickly that even in our modern day and age, we have people like Tim Taylor actually, according to Nathaniel Gillis, building altars out in the desert and potentially engaging in some occult rituals. And he will actually have gifts left for him at these altars. And again, someone who's downloading technology and actually filing patents. So we have a ton of this that's actually still going on today. Does this mean that every single person who files a patent is in touch with a demon? No, that's not what I'm saying, although I'm sure it will be clipped somewhere. What Dory is trying to say is that this phenomenon is thousands of years old. If you listen to someone like Nathaniel Gillis, this is something that just changes its face, it changes its mask, it adapts to our own culture, it adapts to the times we're in, but it is all the same thing. And this is what Dory is trying to bring to us today. That are aliens the exact same thing as demons? No, I don't think so. Although many people think they are. My husband's in the background growling at me right now. But like the post I have just put up in the nest, there is a hierarchy of beings. Some of them are more physical, they have more technology, some of them are less corporeal, and they are, at various places up on this food chain, but they are all on the same food chain. I just had, I mentioned earlier, a 6 to 7 hour, I don't even remember how long meeting I had with Amy. And Amy, I'll make the story short, was given information through a hybrid, and the hybrid conveyed telepathically a scene of about 10 manted beings in red robes. They were in a circle, and they were concentrating all of their psychic effort. And if you know anything about the mantids, they have more power than anyone in this room could even imagine. So 10 of them or so were concentrating all of their psychic effort in a circle. And what they did was they manifested a non corporeal entity. This entity was their boss, higher up on the food chain. And this entity then proceeded to give the hybrids some instructions on what the entity or what the plan was for this planet Earth. So this is all related stuff. We cannot separate even Grant Cameron. Grant Cameron is very much a love and light guy, right? Kind of opposite of me. Grant Cameron, I heard him say it with his own mouth. He said you cannot separate the UFO alien phenomenon from the spirit, the supernatural paranormal phenomenon. You can't do it. You cannot separate them. They are it's all the same thing. It's a spectrum of the same thing. So my husband's killing me right now. Sorry about that, you guys. So Dory, I would love to get into how does this intersect for you? How do we bring aliens and occult magic and people like Aleister Crowley? How do we bring those two things together? Because again, ufology wants to keep these things separate. They say things like if you have a view, a religious view, or if you want to insert demons into this picture, you're just ignorant and you're just believing in some old religion that's not actually true, et cetera, et cetera. And then on the Christian or the religious side, they will just say, well, aliens are just demons and, just call it a day. And, there's inaccuracy on both sides. So how do you see that coming together? What's your experience on bringing together what we commonly call aliens and this occult magic you were involved with?
Okay, so I am with you, Fringe. I don't believe that the okay, I'm going to cite a difference between grays and what I was familiar with as my pilots, okay, which were um, blue Palladians, and my first abduction in real life experience was with three men who identified as Nordics. So I don't think the ones that are piloting the ships, the one in the hierarchy, the ones that are sending the ships out to scout or whatever it is that they're doing right now, I don't think those are demons. I don't think those are low-level demons. Low-level demons, they, which maybe the grays might be in that, category, but we're dealing with something else. And when I talked about the watchers, they were the part of the holy angels of God in the beginning, and they rebelled. Um, but they are also the ones, the Nakash, who there's bloodline for that too. Nakash was the thing that we've been told was the serpent that tempted Eve. Now, there's beings that are serpentine because all of this also relates to serpent worship. So it's no secret that there's reptilians and mantids and but I think the ones that are running the show and they're the generals, they're the colonels. Okay, so they're probably in, but they're not holy angels anymore, but they are from the highest hierarchy on down. So I don't I think they're they're more than just demons. Demons are nasty. They like to mess with people. But these things that are flying around in ships, they're from a higher, they're higher in the hierarchy. I can't say exactly what they are except for the old gods. The old gods, the angels who fell, like, so super beings, right? That's what I got.
Thank you so much, Dory. Can you tell us then, just from your experience, in this type, in this environment, it sounds, you want to give us just a little bit of your experience there so people can have a better understanding. And then I would love to get into things like these entities want us meditating. Why do they do that? It seems like it's for us, right? We're going to be raising our consciousness through meditation. And really, what's happening, it's actually for them. I look at someone like Whitley Strieber, who says that is forced to wake up every morning at 3 a.m. to meditate. And if he doesn't, he's physically tortured. Okay, so is that for him or is that for them? I mean, they're definitely getting some kind of benefit from it. And, things like being involved in Eastern religions and emptying ourselves and well, gosh, I have on my list the Galactic Federation and us using our psi abilities and they want us surrounding ourselves with white light. All of these things that they want us to do is actually for them. Now, I'm not going to say with 100% certainty that none of those things could benefit us. I think some of those things could. I mean, I have been at my best when I've been the most lucid and aware from meditating. But what did that meditation do but actually give them more access to me? So it becomes a double-edged sword. But I want people to understand it's not just for us. They're not just here to raise our consciousness. They're not just here to, ascend us to the 5D. Look at my post, the second post on my feed right now. That's what's happening on the ships. We have people like Ted Rice speaking about these things feeding on us, literally, physically feeding on us, and multiple races working together at the same time. So a lot of times I hear, oh, you're being an exo racist to say they're all the same they're not all the same. Some of them are here to raise our consciousness. Well, the beings who want to raise your consciousness are eating people on the ship. So I'm just going to throw that out there and go right to you, Tori.
Gee, thanks, Fringe. That was just great. They're eating
I like
people
to
on
hit
the
hard,
ships.
Dory. I like to hit
What
them.
what what was that, Hiker?
No, go ahead. I said I like to hit
Oh,
them hard. Dory. I don't pull a lot of punches in here. When I'm
nope.
in my own space, there are very few punches that are pulled.
Perfect. So the once again, the reason why they left their first estate, why they left heaven to come down here was of a sexual nature. They wanted that, and they aren't created with that, right? So they got tempted, and emptying yourself. So I've read a couple of books by Father Malachi Martin. May he rest in peace. He was a very famous and prolific exorcist, but what he did was he collected data points on all of the cases that he worked with, which is what is leading me to get the data points cross-referenced between what's happening during abductions and what he found. And one of the things he found uh, is that it was a high percentage of the cases that he worked on when they interview you beforehand, many of them said, I started practicing transcendental dental meditation. I started emptying my mind and going into the void. So, for meditation, I would suggest you meditate in a meadow and maybe think about plants growing. And, I mean, it's great to meditate or, and pray. I'm an avid prayer person. So, but emptying your mind seems to be one of the things that they are especially desirable of. Jacques Vallée has some constants that happen with experiencers and abductees, and one of those constants is that the the aliens will tell you to become a Buddhist. They will tell you to become a vegetarian, which is what they did with me. They told me to become a vegetarian. And I did that for almost 3 years. Anyway, and I don't know why they ask these things. There's something with your body, something changes. Is there something in the protein in animals, that they don't want certain of their subjects? I'll call us their subjects, I guess, if you will. Um, I don't know. That's it's definitely a possibility. Uh, but they are we familiar with cattle mutilations? There is a couple of human cases on the books for this type of thing too. So, yeah, they're nefarious. And if you empty your mind, that's one of the things. Also, I'm sorry, yoga positions, a lot of them come from certain magical symbols and things like that, which is connected to the emptying of your mind. So we just, and I'm not saying that yoga can't be good for you either. But I'd probably pick Pilates just because it doesn't involve the other stuff. It's closely connected with Hinduism, which is a pantheon and a caste system. And I feel like the aliens treat us as we're a caste system to them, and they just go in and you know do whatever they want, and that people just have to find a way to stop it from happening, and that's probably going to be different for everyone else. And also there are some people, some of us, that have a calling on our lives where we have to see these things. We have to still have a hand in watching what's going on, because we're the ones who are here in this space tonight that are talking about it, that are reporting on it, that are gathering the intel from these things. So sometimes, you know, things are allowed because information needs to be gathered. I'm not saying, and the violent stuff isn't good. I'm not saying any of this is good, but some of us are still allowed to see, like me having sightings again after 10 year, 10 years, 12 years. And now they're like here all the time. And so I'm not worried about them. They don't scare me. I know what this is, but I, for some reason, am supposed to continue to be a witness to this. And I think that's part of it. We're witnesses too. But to stop it is something that everyone has to feel their way around, like a recovering alcoholic has to get to a point where they can work a program and stay sober, right? So there's that too. Because we've always had people that, the Watchers went to Enoch after they did all the stuff with the women, after the hybrids and the technology and the everything. They went to Enoch and asked Enoch to be a mediator for them. I think that there's still something like that going on within this phenomenon, but I haven't quite got all the receipts that I need for that yet either. But some people are actually mediating from here for them. And I have videos of Christine Morgan from Lucis Trust where she explains that exact meditation that I told you guys about in the beginning with that order. And I had never heard anyone speak this out loud, but she did. She said exactly how they do it. And they don't know who's going to be chosen to speak. They say it like that. We don't know who's going to be chosen to speak when we raise the cone of energy. See, that's a clue, a cone of energy. Anyway, raising the vibration. They don't know who's going to get chosen to speak. You know what that means? It means everyone in that room has agreed to allow themselves to be the speaker, the channeler, the meditator. Three body problem, the whole UN situation in that show, they choose four people and call them the meditators. Oh, you bet your butt, but they're channelers. They're the ones who are chosen to speak through the non-human intelligences, speak through them. And they actually form policy and direct, and this is how the New Age movement got started. So I know that what I'm saying is going to disturb a lot of people, but there are definite connections and they're too numerous to discount. So I think we have to look at the whole landscape. We can't just pick and choose and go, oh, that sounds so fluffy and nice. That can't be a problem. You know, yeah. So let me just land it there for now.
Thanks, Dory. We do have several people requesting to speak, but it's up to you, Dory, if you want to take questions or not. We can
Yeah.
assure all the questions will be respectful or people will get bounced. So that's totally up to you. So if you're willing, that's great. We'll start letting people up to ask questions. Jenny, I saw you requesting, put it back in if you want to. So I wanted to touch on a couple other things because I think, and we spoke on the phone a couple of days ago and we discussed how these meditations, a lot of the energy work, exercising our own sight abilities, messing with our chakras, so many of these things that we do are actually being encouraged by the aliens themselves, right? The aliens are telling us that this is what we should be doing to raise our consciousness so we can ascend to 5D. And by the way, there's no evil in the world. There's no good and bad. It's, we're looking for non-duality. We just want to go middle of the road and put our head in the sand and pretend there's nothing negative happening in the world, because if there is, it's just your own ignorance. And also, by the way, if you have a negative experience, it's because your vibration's not high enough. So these are all things that actually benefit them. I have been told that raising the vibration and the meditations, etc., actually just give them easier access to us. And it just makes it easier for them to speak through us, to channel, to give us these technologies, to take us out of our beds. It just makes us easier farm animals, is what it's doing. Now, is there a good side to these practices? There could be. And you know what? Maybe some people can get away with it. I don't know. I'm not one of those people. I know that. I know that I can't even dip my toe into the waters without it being like moss to a flame. And I'm okay with that. At somewhere along the way, especially I think in the modern age, we have started to equate psi abilities with some type of elevated spirituality or superiority of the human. And I think we should stop looking at it that way. It's not a talent to be able to call in a UFO and get them to snatch you out of your bed. It's just not, it's not on my list for sure. So Dory, you're okay. Actually, while we're bringing up a couple people to ask some questions, tell me what your thoughts are on the Galactic Federation, if you would.
Oh, the Galactic Federation. The Galactic Federation back in the early 90s was called the Galactic Federation of Light. Okay. And I was still involved with the guru I had, very, very new age, very energy. She's written 12 books on energy, her main one that's used as a textbook. for people is called Everything is Energy. And so that was part of, being one of her proteges was, opening up your chakras. And like Fringe just said, that was an antenna for me. That was like putting out the Christmas lights and turning them on full bore. It's like ringing the dinner bell, okay? That for me, that was ringing the dinner bell. And I would, when I started getting attacked, she kept telling me I wasn't keeping myself in my bubble of golden or white light, right? And so I literally would spend hours a day in my mind in nothingness. I succeeded mentally in being in absolute nothingness for long periods of time while I held my spirit essence in this golden white bubble of light, right? And, and she kept telling me I wasn't doing it right or I wasn't doing it enough. But anyway, it was about 2006, 2007 that I had a huge, oh my gosh, realization that these ascended masters were never human people on this planet. Okay, Saint Germain might have been a saint, but the one that they have, and look at the colors they use. If you're looking at all that stuff, the Galactic Federation, the Ascended Masters like Saint Germain and Kuthumi and some of those. One guy was real. He was their Maitreya, and they kept trotting out the Maitreya. And Aleister Crowley at one time wanted to be the Maitreya, the world teacher. Well, they have put out emails for years since the 80s, the Galactic Federation of Light. All you have to do is sign up, they'll send you the emails, and it'll say things like Star Commander Ashtar, which at one time it was also called Ashtar Command. Commander Ashtar has reported that the Galactic Federation has intercepted uh, negative entities from Aldebaran or whatever, right? And you would get these newsletters about this group of Palladians are doing this, and this is what's going to happen for humanity, and you're all going to ascend soon, and yada yada. And I had all the I am doctrines, and I was reading them, and I was doing that meditation that comes from deep on the inside of these people. I mean, not the inside of these people, but the inside of the group. Okay, the inner circle, right? Basically, um, and so I had this realization that these ascended master materials were all channeled, and that they were probably the ones flying around in the ships. This was before I heard, Elie Marzulli speak, and he equated them to the angels who fell. And that kind of put more pieces together. But my bullshit meter, I'm sorry, went off the charts. And so I started a blog. Oh my gosh, I think in 2010. But it didn't take off. Nobody wanted to hear this. It was called Ascended Lies, Fallen Truths, because they've crafted this thing. These three women, Blavatsky, Bailey, Besant, crafted this whole thing with the Galactic Federation and the whole narrative that they're getting communications from what's happening out in the universe. You know what? Great, if they are. Why hasn't someone done something? Why hasn't Ashtar Command stopped the visitations, right? Why hasn't somebody stopped the influx of sightings and crashes and creatures now that we're seeing? Where are the Galactic Federation? And now they just call them the Galactic Federation instead of the Galactic Federation of Light. And I suppose at some point in time, somebody said, this Ashtar Command sounds kind of hokey. We probably should call it something else. I know, we'll call it the Galactic Federation of Light. And then from there it goes to, maybe this Galactic Federation of Light sounds a little hokey. We probably should just drop the light and call it the Galactic Federation, right? Like they have uniforms. And even people who have seen these Galactic Federation, they'll draw, a lot of them are Nordics, but they'll draw the symbols that they wear on the uniforms and stuff. So there's that, and that's what I know about them. And I was hoping that, when I woke up on Twitter 6 weeks ago and realized that I had to come out of my experiencer bubble and start sharing, that a lot of this was going to be really, really unpopular. And I understand that very much. I just want to help people guard themselves from potentially negative, devastating, soul sucking experiences, and to test test the spirits, test the truth. And they're not going to ask you or do things to you that, who's going to allow an abusive, right? We don't let men abuse us, or parents abuse their children. At least we made an effort to not have that happen, right? It still goes on. But so, the fact that these entities, so many people have these violent experiences and flesh taken and marks on them, I don't see where anybody can see anything good about that, right? So that's where I'm at with that.
Thank you, Dory. So I think a couple of the things that we do as humans to make excuses for this. Number one, it's damaging to our own ego as a human being. If we were not chosen for a good experience, or if people like me, you, and Hiker Gal, we start seeing through the lies of the Galactic Federation. Same thing happened to me, Dory. Not extensively. I wasn't into, a lot of occult magic or anything, but had the same courting procedure. They court you. You're psychic. You're here to save the world. You're here to spread the light. You need to, spread the light to the world, and the Galactic Federation is there behind you. They have your back, and they're coming to save everybody. I went through this whole thing too. Same thing. And when you start seeing behind the curtain, that's when the terrible things start happening, and the punishments start for many of us. Not everyone has that same experience, but for many of us. And all we're here doing is trying to tell other experiencers, and by the way, people who have yet to dip their toe into that water, but people who are being encouraged by the likes of a Stephen Greer. All the aliens are good, and go out there and call one to supper. That this is probably not something you want to do anytime soon, and if you do, at least I think it should come with a warning label. If you want to go out there and call these things in to dinner, it should be a warning label that, by the way, you might also end up with shadow people tormenting your wife and kids. So just be very
Thank
careful.
Thank you for saying that, because I was just going to hop in and say poltergeist activity, shadow people, ghosts manifesting, strange noises. Oh man, something outside my house used to scrape along the side of my house. And I live in a 2-story Foursquare, right? So the outside of my house is big, and something would scrape against it like it had a huge metal hand, and you could hear. I mean, yeah, if you want this kind of stuff to be happening to you, picture frames breaking, flying off the wall, yeah, shadow people, sleep paralysis, yeah, by all means ring the dinner bell. I mean, and I'm just saying, you might want to think twice about that. This, with the body of work that we have from, the people who have written about this extensively. I'm going to mention Jacques Vallée again. There are constants, there are data points that are similar, and they relate to other things. And so, if we can, through doing these spaces, at least give you some pause before you decide maybe to do a CE5 and call in. Because you can call them in. I did it at a conference with Daniel Pinchbeck and Dennis McKenna. And then the next morning, I had puncture wound the size of if you take the ink piece out of a Bic pen and that round, that like about that wide, I had a puncture mark in my thigh, just one single puncture mark. And then I got really sick when I came home, almost like I had been poisoned by something like radiation. My hair was falling out. I was nauseous. I was exhausted. The migraines were debilitating. There are consequences for doing these things because we're dealing with physics that not only apply here, but apply up there. It truly is as above, so below. And you will experience ramifications.
Yeah, and then we'll get to the hands straight away, Dory. But I just want to kind of throw it out there that if we just use a little bit of logic and we say there are definitely benevolent beings out there, benevolent beings actually wanting to see us grow and, become the best we can be. If those benevolent beings are aware, like we are aware, that doing a CE5 can actually result in damage, to our physical bodies, to our brains, people getting cancer, people getting Havana syndrome, then can we actually say that it's the benevolent beings telling us to go out there with zero discernment, calling in beings for CE5? I mean, it just makes no sense whatsoever. A truly good and benevolent being is not going to have us engaging in practices that could end up damaging us, damaging our minds, our physical bodies, our souls, getting us entangled with negative entities. So even if we believe there's benevolent beings out there, which I do, I don't believe that it would be benevolent beings encouraging us to engage in these practices that can end up damaging us. So it just doesn't make sense. Judge Judy taught me a long time ago, if it doesn't make sense, it's probably not true. So here we are. Dory, if you want to get to some hands, we can start with Dustin and see how it goes. Dustin, welcome to the space. Do you have a question for Dory or anyone else on the panel?
Well, as opposed to questions, I was hoping to offer my answers. If you guys have any questions, I am a bit of an expert on what you would call the old gods. I take the position they are the Genesis 6 watchers.
Excellent. Well, if you just want to stay up on the panel, we might get some questions for you. Dory or Hiker Gal, Jason, do you have any questions for Dustin while we're on this?
Welcome, Dustin. I'm going to follow you. Hopefully, we can have some sharing of information in the back channels because you're experienced with old gods. You believe I love it. Thank you for coming to this space. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I shared a couple things at the top if anybody wants to check out what I wrote on them. But they were prophesied to return. They were imprisoned after the Genesis 6 creation of the Nephilim or Anunnaki monsters. That's where the demons come from. And that's why these things are bigger and meaner than the demons and have their own bodies and are obsessed with sex and punishment and access. The Kundalini winding its way up your spine is the serpent from the Garden of Eden and its friends, the Genesis 6 200 watchers. So they were imprisoned and punished, but they were prophesied to be released in one Enoch. Sorry, I have Lego noises in the background with my 3 kids here. But basically, that is the root of all of the so-called old gods, all of the mythologies. Every religion on earth basically talks about them and their offspring, the giants that had 6 fingers and 6 toes that built all those megalithic ruined cities and structures we cannot build today. Stones we cannot lift today, like the Baalbek stones, etc. And they don't come from far away. They are interdimensional, dimensional. They're spiritual. They're not extraterrestrial. These things have been here the whole time. And now that they're back, it's basically a repeat of Genesis 6, an exchange of blood and sex and sin for technology, with an explosion of not only technology, but also abortion, communion, seances, and genetic corruption, GMO people.
Interesting. So actually for Dustin and Dory, we do seem to have some predictions in the UFO community of the old gods coming back, only the view there is that these are the good guys. You know, Hathor is coming back, or Saint Michael, or whoever. A bunch of these old gods are going to be coming back, and they've actually gotten quite a few people in the UFO community to align with them. So I'd love to hear from you, Dory, and also Dustin on that idea.
So I agree with what Dustin said. It's been foretold that this would happen, and that okay, so there's a war in heaven and it's ramping up. You have to think of it as okay, so we're on this planet called Earth, terrestrial, but there are the parallel kingdom, if you will. um you know and the parallel kingdom can be the dead also, the valley of the Raphaim, where the dead souls, Hinnom, valley of Hinnom. So they, are being, they are, and they're fighting right now in the kingdom for who wins. Okay, and you'll see on people make memes or something's going around, people go, God wins. Yeah, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be ugly for a while. And what's going to happen is God and his good guys, God and his angels and his armies and his divine council are going to take those guys and they're going to throw them into here. And once they throw them into here, it's going to get ugly for the people that are not working with them, but it's going to get uglier at the end for the people that are, because they're being duped out of their eternal, beautiful place that all of our souls are destined to go afterwards. You are actually risking where you will spend eternity by playing with these things.
So, Dory, before we get to Dustin, you would say a big no to the old gods, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it is probably what it is, though. I agree with him that the old gods are, yeah, I mean, they're active, they're here. He's right. They're the watchers from Genesis 6, and then people worship them as gods. Actually, their access point originally where they came down was Mount Hermon, which is near Bashan. And in one of the neighboring countries, they didn't use Bishan, they used Bethan because of their spelling of their languages, but both words mean place of the serpent. So this does go back to that serpent worship, serpent um, motif, everywhere. So they came down on Mount Hermon, and that's, Mesopotamia, Syria, Tyre, those things, the Valley of the Raphaim, Gilgal. That's where they're probably accessing us again, is through that same place, or they're accessing us through portals that have been opened up by co-opted humans like the dark magicians that worked long spells to get portals to open and for those things to drop in.
Thanks, Dory. And again, we will get to Dustin. I just like to throw out what's happening, though, in our community as it relates to our conversation. And we do have, uh, high-level influencers in the community who are telling us that Hathor is going to be coming back, and that the aliens are actually angels, and that these are the good guys, and that we need to embrace these things as they come back. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that that's what we're talking about here.
Shoot,
Now, this
Fringe,
is
I lost you. I'm going to have to drop down.
Okay, we'll see you shortly, Dory. Dustin, go ahead, and we'll get to some hands.
Sure. Well, since we're on the topic, and since you guys are aware of the narrative, the Watchers and the old gods and such, and you brought up this division, I would then point to the history of what these things are and what they've done to us, and their nature, their agenda, and basically prove that they are in fact evil. So Hathor, that's kind of a later name, frankly. That was sort of another one of the many babbled tongues. Remember the Tower of Babel when God babbled the tongues? Well, the story of Nimrod then became the story of all of these other dying and resurrecting sun gods, which became Baal or Osiris or Apollo or Milkheart, or so many different names, like 70 different versions of the same story with the same guy, different babbled tongues. And that's why all mythologies basically carried the same basic elements, like a flood, and a man who survived that flood with his 3 sons, repopulated the world, etc. Doesn't matter which mythology you go to, they all have that story. So the female in the story, his mother and his wife, and the mother of his love spawn, Tammuz, demon child, was Semiramis, and her name also was babbled in this story, and she became known as many names. Ashtarte, I think you guys were talking about the Ashtar command earlier. Well, Ashtarte and Ashtaroth are names featured in the Bible, some of these various names of the babbled tongues of these false gods. But Hathor was essentially just Semiramis, who was a blood-sacrificing transgender queen of sex and whoredom. And in the ancient world, they had all sorts of prayer tablets to her from the Sumerian period, for example, and different names for prophets at their brothels, that kind of thing. And she was prayed to and known to change her own sex and those of her followers. So Hathor is not a friend, and they themselves worshipped and wanted to bring back, that was kind of Nimrod's thing. He wanted to bring back the religion of the old gods from the pre-flood world. He wanted to kill God and get even and restore the lost glory of man, which was really at that point monster. That's why the flood happened, because all flesh was corrupted. And Noah was saved in his, he was saved because he was pure in his generations or genetics. He was a pure human in a time of all these GMO people. And basically, we see this narrative play out where they tried to kill God, unite mankind, and bring back the old God's religion. And if you go to any of these ancient temples or murals or hieroglyphic writings, etc., on these ancient stone, I'll point to Egypt, for example, you can find the ancient so-called gods often depicted with either a halo or sun rays around their head, indicating non-human or mingled divine so-called blood, God blood, which are the offspring of the fallen watchers. Plato actually referenced this and whined about how they kept mingling their blood too often with mortal men and diluting themselves. And you often will also find a crown or horns with little snakes coming out of them. Those are the wisdom serpents. Those are the old gods, the Genesis 6 watchers that are the basis of all of these things. Watch the Lego, Sissy, please. I'm trying to talk. Thank you. So sorry, I've got all kinds of Lego noises. It's hard to think about what I'm even saying. Anyway, basically that is the story of what these things were, where they came from. They want to basically kill babies and get revenge against God because they are cursed and damned. Their entire modus operandi is to trade sin and baby blood, especially the high tax, like high blood tax societies like the Aztecs, who are just mass sacrificing people. They change that for trade that for power and for technology. And since they were released, we've seen, as I said, a repeat of Genesis 6 since around the time of Roswell. So I absolutely believe all these abduction stories are happening. I've seen some things myself. The name of Yahweh, the father of Jesus, or the name of Jesus will rebuke these things and scare them off and give you your power and your freedom back.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. We'll get to some more hands. I believe Chrome is next. Chrome, welcome to the space.
Hi, how's everyone doing tonight? Thank you very much for the opportunity. What I wanted to speak about was even religious beliefs. So Pope Benedict the 16th traveled to Washington, D.C. on April 2008, followed by meetings by the Vatican representatives at Groom Lake. These visits were the opportunities to compare even spiritual views and beliefs with Catholicism, with the Catholics. So it's interesting the correlation that you guys are speaking about. So this is something I wanted to share. During each visit, a representative from the Vatican was present. The Pope was particularly interested in the religious activity of Ebens. The Ebens worship a god. The Pope feels their God is the same as ours. The Ebens worship a god differently, but not so much in fact. They brought, through the Eben ambassador, artifacts of Eben gods that fit directly into our Christian belief. Several Eben paintings, sculptures, and statues and carved fetishes were similar to our God. In fact, the story of their God appearing thousands of years ago on Serpo and setting up religious sects on their planets is similar to our story of Jesus or Christ. The Ebens chant verses, which then is translated to similar to prayers. The Ebens chant contain 26 verses, which they repeat every day at every hour, even the afternoon, which is considered the Serpo day. The chants sound like Tibetan chants. On a particular Eben day of this year, the Ebens expand their chants to 38 verses. The extra 12 chants permeate to angels, which have translated to mean saints, which have helped the Eben society. This information has never been released. The basic belief and religion of the Ebens are simple. However, their practices is very complex. The Ebens worship one God, which they call entity, and they have religious symbols that reflect other religious entities, which they call subdeities. This would be similar to our identification with saints. The Ebens believe in life after death is similar to of the Roman Catholic Church, some Eastern religious doctrines. Once an Eben dies, his or her whole soul, or the bioplasmic body, is taken from the body by the subsidies, which is considered the saints, and is cleansed from all their sin. The soul is taken by at midpoint. The Catholics would call it purgatory, between heaven and the midpoint. Then once the soul is ready, it is taken over by the supreme plateau, which is heaven, their heaven, where it remains for an eternity. Their beliefs become much more complex at this time. Some souls call this arranged and are prepared in the entry back into living society, the plane of existence. The Ebens believe that they perform some specific acts referred to as karma on earth. During their regular life, they can come back to living to life in any body. The Ebens believe in reincarnation and the eternity of the soul. The Ebens do not believe that animals or their sworn enemies from other space traveling races have souls. This is something that may hold people over with Project Serpo. So, if anybody's interested about where this whole Tibetan, Japanese, and how Hitler then in turn gained the power, well, the reason a lot of these Ebens is the religious is Tibetan. They had something called the Black Dragons and the Green Dragons and the Green Men, which were the reptilians. So Hitler rose to power by connecting himself with Japanese culture, which in turn they knew the Green Dragon Society, and the Tibetans knew the Black Dragon Society. Then in turn, the Green Men came to Hitler and gave him the Vril Society, all these other societies that exist at that time, and the reason they went to Antarctica, New Swabenland. So, I just wanted to just share this, for those that are, kind of interested how you guys were talking about, religious beliefs and alien beliefs. And, this is a real encounter that happened in April 2008. And again, if any of you guys are interested on understanding where this Luciferian AI technology comes from, I highly suggest researching Project Serbo, where you'll understand what the yellow book is, you'll understand what the red book is, and you'll understand a wide variety of things that have transpired. And it's a lot of good knowledge that is needed in order to fill the gaps of a lot of things. Now, one interesting thing is that General Byrd traveled down to Antarctica and actually met the king of the world, which was Lucifer. And if you guys remember, there was a time where all the people of power were traveling to Antarctica. It's because this AI, Luciferian technology, its main idea is to implant everybody with nanites, which you could consider the jab or the vax, in order to take control of the body. Now, one interesting thing is if you look at the word reptile and you see a lot of our politicians, they wear suits, but the way that reptilians gain a lot of their function is through this throat chakra, as to why you see a tie around, as to why they wear suits in the government. So, their main agenda, just like the Galactic Federation and all these other, they have already been infiltrated by nanites. and it's just a continuous project for them so that they can take over. And the main idea of a fallen angel is to use whatever tactic they can to take away Christ consciousness within us so that Christ can't come back and get the 144,000 people that are his. So their main agenda is to lie, steal, do whatever they can in order to influence us to change into transhumanism. The further that we can get away from Christ's blood, the easier it is for them to gain function over this world and not allowing us to transcend to Christ when he comes here. Now, another interesting thing I just wanted to say before I'm done here is that everything that's going on right now is the agenda. It's a Luciferian technology, whether it's the mantis, whether it's the reptilians, they all bring the Luciferian technology here, whether it's their pentagrams, the child, sacrifice. Everything they do is just part of their anatomy. Now, whether they're fallen angels or if they're different races, it's very hard to tell because of if you look at their bodies, the big eyes, the big heads, and then you would look at animals here that are nocturnal, they have the same features. Now, if an alien or if something else came from a different planet, they would not have those same features because when you're out in space, the higher frequencies don't have bodies. So it would be virtually almost impossible for these creatures to hold a body outside of Earth. They're here on this planet and they're not allowed to leave. They got stuck here in a prison planet. The firmament was created so that they could not leave. So if they can make people that are Christ-like not be able to leave because they can't leave, then the only thing they can do is turn everybody the same to have the same belief and keep us away from Christ consciousness. But thank you very much for letting me mention this.
Fringe, can I hop in here real quick and make a comment to Chrome there a moment? Back to Christine Morgan at Lucis Trust and all of their materials and what they believe in, and they are basically they're theosophists. They use quotes in their meditations from Madame Blavatsky, who was a theosophist. I want to tell you that out of Christine Morgan's mouth, she will tell you Christ consciousness is not the Christ of Christians. It is not the Jesus of the Bible. Our Christ consciousness is love and light, but love is not the familial or romantic love. It is the force of magnetism. And the light is the light of Lucifer. And they are ushering in his rightful place as the God of this world because, now I'm going to paraphrase, because he was given a bad rap. So I just want everyone to know there's a difference between what they believe the Christ consciousness is Lucifer. That's what they're selling. That was their plan to overthrow Jesus Christ from the church. Okay? And the churches have been, when you've got a big, huge pastor who has a mega church and he says hell doesn't exist, evil isn't real, that's a problem because he's not preaching from the Bible he supposedly set his church up on. So I just wanted to make that distinction because I feel that it's really important. Thank you.
If I can, even 30 seconds to address that as well, Fringe.
Yes, absolutely. You guys go ahead and then we'll get to UFO timeline.
Thanks. I got to run soon anyway, and the kids are going to go crazy if I don't spend some Lego time with them. So, briefly, I want to drop basically two really big dot connecting keys to kind of understanding reality. One of those is obviously it's the seed war. Most people haven't heard that term, but they are familiar with it to some degree. You've seen the elements of man versus monster over history. We've talked about the offspring of these alien or fallen angel watchers in Genesis 6, and the Nephilim. These became the demigods, the giants that made all those old buildings and such. And they got smaller. The Bible talks about examples like Goliath and David, the famous example. Everybody's heard about it. And that was a much smaller one later. So I just want to point out they still exist. There are so-called deep state today. They're not reptilian in looking. They don't have scales or anything like that. But they are seed of the serpent. They're not human genetics. They look like us. They blend in. I could point out who they are. I might get in trouble for it. And in terms of, I think the gentleman brought up the firmament. I want to point out that the biblical cosmology, if you will, including the firmament, proves these things did not come from somewhere else. They had to have been here the whole time. There's nowhere else to go except heaven. So we're in an enclosed system, and the firmament is a real thing. And everybody believed that up until basically NASA and Rome in the last 500 years. So I know that those are both very controversial things, biblical cosmology and the demons of Genesis 6, the giants, they became today's Jews.
Oh, here we go. Okay, we'll leave that one there.
Okay, I have to let. Yeah,
I know I'm going to get some
can't
heat.
subscribe to that.
Yeah.
Totally okay.
Khazarians.
Yes, I've definitely heard that.
Yeah.
I do want to go back to something that Dory said, and it's this idea of Christ consciousness. Again, this is just a new age watering down of the actual true and real Christ. It's something that I almost fell for myself, so I just like to throw that out there. Everything they do is an inversion and it's mimicry. And so they come very close and then lead us away and lead us astray. Welcome to the space to UFO Timeline. Jump in.
What's up? Thanks for having me. Thanks for the little buffer so I don't have to follow the those. I love this conversation. I really do. This is I don't know, it's kind of like high level conversation for the occult and esoteric parts of what is like modern ufology, which a lot of people just don't acknowledge, and they don't like let it fold in and incorporate. But it's here, right? Like it's definitely around. And I'm surprised. I want to know, Dory, like I'm surprised at what I've heard people like Gary Nolan and Jacques Vallée talk about when they give these like kind of like big brain talks at places like the SALT conference, and they're referring to these aliens, these beings, like almost with identical characteristics as what would be like angels of the Blavatsky era and whatnot, right? Have you noticed that at all?
Absolutely, which is part of why I came wandering out of my little hidey hole, because we all got to talk about this now. It's imminent. But yes, I definitely have noticed that too. UFO Timeline, definitely.
Yeah, and that's good because I thought I was going crazy for a while, being like the only person picking up on this stuff, right? And then it gets even stranger when you get into like what Rudolf Steiner predicted about this 20th century, right? Like he spoke of this coming event that we'd be judged between the second and third millennium, that we would have this moment. The year 2000 would be like one of these markers where if things were going one direction or the other, we would know by that time. And he lists like 3 different things that would be apparent if our instincts had gone awry. And I guess like before we get to that, I mean, he talks about these angels that are building images in our mind and that are doing a lot of this work that our consciousness considers its own process, right? Like we take ownership of our thoughts and our imagination, but they're constantly being influenced, according to Steiner and Blavatsky and stuff. They're constantly being influenced by these external forces that can't incarnate on Earth in the physical realm, but they can influence a person. And that's like their conduit, that's their avatar. And the weird thing that he talked about is how if through the Industrial Revolution, through these inventions that were brought in here through like Luciferian methods, right? Because he's the light bringer, right? These ideas, these are some could consider technology Luciferian ideas, and that kind of like has the potential to do great things, right? But also hinder us. And if it was hindering us, then the angels, the people building images in our mind, they couldn't do their work, and they couldn't. Like we don't listen to our dreams anymore. We're not really religious anymore. We're not paying attention to that world. We're very nuts and bolts. I'm speaking, of course, of like Western society, modern society, and that and Steiner, he saw that coming, and he was like, yeah, these angels are going to start to, and they're going to change form, and they're going to come into the earth realm. They're going to leave their consciousness, non-physical realm, and they're going to figure out a way to come over here and then just do their work on earth, because they couldn't do it in the minds of the people. And I wanted to like black that out when I read it and be like, whatever. But then I kept finding out more and more about experiencer stories and contact experiences, and it just really fit the bill. So if anybody wants to check that out, I recommend it. There's a
Which book is it? Is it one of Gary
no, this
Nolan's
is a
books?
Rudolf Steiner book. So
Oh,
he like
Rudolph
gave this
Steiner.
talk.
Yes, him
Yeah.
and Blavatsky were. I put a quote up from Blavatsky up in the nest.
I'm gonna check that out. There is a video series on YouTube. If you look up Rudolf Steiner, you're bound to find it. And the video is titled like "What the Angels Do in Our Astral Body," and it's somewhere in there. And I have clips of it that I'm gonna put as like a sequel to the video I did about angels and aliens, because it's just really interesting. And I think we're seeing it, which is bizarre. Again, I didn't want to consider that, but after listening to all these different experiencer stories and comparing it to those, predictions, very dead on, very accurate.
Thanks, Tupa. Appreciate that. Dory, did you want to jump in on that?
No, thank you, Tupa. Yes, I love to hear when someone comes along and says, I read this thing and I wanted to I wanted to block it out and push it aside, but then I kept reading experiencer stories and it started to the things started to line up. So this is just, it's part of our progression with this phenomena, I think, and so that's why it's really important. And your app UFO timeline is really amazing. Kudos.
Awesome. I see Tony has actually popped back into the space story, and one of Tony's favorite topics of all time is portals. So I wanted to redirect you back in case he's actually still listening. Tell Tony everything you know about portals, these magicians opening up portals and what can come through and how it's done. Anything you might know about it. We don't have to take a lot of time. And then we'll get to some more hands.
Okay, so opening up a portal, you do some traditional things. It usually involves a sigil of some sort that you will put on the floor, or you'll make you'll draw it on a piece of paper in specific kind of script. And I do believe that the Kabbalah is the first Jewish text that had people working with these quote archangels, right? And so you'll do a sigil or whatever, and then it involves ritual, um dedications. It involves certain, I'm going to call it elixirs, which contain a combination of different body fluids, sometimes can obtain blood, but the dark magicians know that there's a sexual elixir that is more powerful than a human or sacrifice of any kind, and that's listed in all the dark grimoires. So these portals are opened with the energies of the magic, the sigils, the rituals, the dedication, the belief, the power that these dark magicians can get themselves to, for them to wield. They will sacrifice blood or animals to the dark gods. The dark gods, right now, from what I understand and some research that I've done, one of the places that modern day actual satanic cults like the Order of Nine Angles will do sacrifices to the dark gods in Algol. The constellation is Algol, and it's actually the eye, one of the eyes of the Medusa constellation. So these things can be opened for an exchange of information. You can also be taken through a portal. This is interdimensional from my experience so far. I've only had interdimensional experience with that. But see, these things come through interdimensionally. Throughout the ages, spirits have manifested physical things like coins and bits of fur, a flower, whatever it might be. So they have the capabilities to manifest things into our reality, which is why we see the ships. Did I
Oh,
answer that okay?
okay. Thank you. Hiker Gal, do you have anything before we get to some more hands?
No, I'm just sitting here taking it all in, trying to digest it, but my brain is melting.
Yeah, there's a little brain melting going on. We like to do that. Hang on just a second. I want to be as fair as I can be. I have a list here, and people have been waiting quite some time. We're going to go to Big Al. Big Al is next.
Hi, Fringe. Thank you for a wonderful, wonderful space. Very interesting. Dory, good to see you here. And Jason, also you. Um, Dory, this question's for you. Can you give me a bio on Madame Blavatsky? When she was born? Where did she grow up? Did she have a mentor? What you were talking about Jack Parsons, I've read some articles about Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard. And what you said tonight, Dory, was amazing because now it ties together the stuff that I was reading about Jack Parsons. And also, Dory, do you believe that that was an accident in his garage when he was getting ready to leave the United States? That
he he
explosion?
he had an accident. He was doing a ritual or a magic working. He was working a spell. He was doing some alchemy, and something went terribly wrong. He also, from some real odd little bits of research I've picked up, some of these little tiny breadcrumbs are hidden in some strange places, but that he actually, he was preparing to leave, and that he was actually, wanting to manifest this alchemical thing. I don't know if he thought he was finally onto, the gold, right, turning mercury into gold or whatever, but he blew himself up. But I've also heard that it was retaliation because he was planning on leaving the that he had gotten as much as he could from it, and that it was retribution. But I have to do a little bit more on that. So
Right. Dory, he was going to Israel to be in charge of their jet propulsion systems. And I can't
yes.
remember what year it was, Dory,
Oh,
but that was where he was going. He was going to Israel and was hired by Israel to work on bombs or whatever. And also in 1930s, Jack Parson was writing letters to Werner von Braun in Germany they were just doing research together, which I find very interesting. But the whole thing about Madame Blavatsky, I don't know where she came from. Did somebody mentored
she
her?
so she was born in the late 1800s, 1888, 1880, maybe earlier, but she was born in the late 1800s. She was actually born um, in Donetsk. It's part of Ukraine right now, but Donetsk was part of Russia when she was born. But that right now in modern times is Ukraine. Um, she was married for a very short time. She quickly got into Spiritism. Spiritism started to flood through Europe and the United States. Now, she was an influencer of Aleister Crowley, who took it to another level because he went and studied the the black magic of some of the medieval magicians that were working with some really specific alchemical substances, and it always involves some kind of body fluid, and the mixing of the body fluid, or it's a icky thing. It's really like gross, actually. But see, the entities like that. So she was born, in the late 1800s. She wrote a book called Externalization of the Hierarchy, which, if you listen to the meditations that Lucis Trust posts on their website, they quote Madame Blavatsky and Theosophy every time they do one. That's the quote that I put up in the nest. Is Madame Blavatsky's. Let me see if I can find it quick, because it's very quick and I just wanted to read it here. 1 second. There we go. Blavatsky said Lucifer represents life through progress, civilization, liberty, independence. Lucifer is the Logos, the serpent, the savior. Now, liberty is a word that Crowley used a lot. Liberty is one of the kind of magic words. So I find it interesting how we came here and, for liberty, right? It's something that you heard a lot during the French Revolution, but the magicians have talked about liberty, liberating ourselves from the dogma of religious constructs, right? That was, we were to liberate ourselves. The women's liberation movement, I mean, these things were born back then. But Crowley was only minutely, well, not, he wasn't hugely influenced by Blavatsky. He definitely read her work. And then her other one is Isis Unveiled, and it's a tome that's real hard to get through. She doesn't write easily, or I mean, it's not easily digested, in my opinion. But then in the 30s, they were working on, like you say, you know, before World War II, even, there was back and forth between scientists and magical adepts, okay, in London and Germany and Bavaria and everywhere. And they were the Thule Society, the Vril Society, the Illuminati. They were already trading these things and they knew a lot about these things. So, yeah, he was influenced, but then he took it to the most extreme degree that he possibly could.
Got you. And did Madame Blavatsky, did she ever make it out to the Pasadena area where Jack Parson was, L. Ron Hubbard, Julian
No,
Huxley?
but I think she made a tour of the East Coast to the Society for Enlightenment and Parapsychological Research. It was the Gacy thing. I do believe she made it to the United States to meet with those people, because Gacy was a channeler, right?
Yes.
And yeah,
Yes.
he hit some things. I mean, most channelers do hit some things, right? But anyway, but that was I think she did make it to meet with him.
And what year was that, Dory?
That she met with him, I'm not sure exactly. I would say the mid 1920s to mid 1930s, because then the Babylon working spell was in 1946. The Roswell crash was 1947. Aleister Crowley died in 1947, but he
Okay.
produced voluminous works. uh Lots and lots. He was a very prolific writer and poet, and so this, and then of course, then Project Paperclip, the scientists were brought in afterwards. L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons both knew Werner von Braun, okay, and Jack Parsons died, I believe, 53 or 54.
The thing is, Werner von Braun must have known a lot about this stuff, Dory,
Oh,
because
sure, Vril,
President
Thule,
Kennedy, yes,
yeah.
yes, President Kennedy was taken aback by some of the things that he said. And they were kind of buddies. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I think John F. Kennedy and Werner von Braun were connected some way or another as far as teaching of esoteric knowledge. And that's possibly what got Kennedy involved with Khrushchev, saying, going behind the CIA and the FBI, saying, hey, if something happens with aliens, it wasn't us. And that's when all hell broke loose with the intelligence community.
Interesting.
Right.
I was going to jump in there, Dory and Big Al. It looks like Blavatsky was dead by 1891. So
Oh,
just
I'm sorry. I had her date of death instead of her date of birth. Dyslexia.
Wait a minute. Wait. How she died in 1891?
this is what I am being told. Down in that little purple pill, we have multiple people commenting on her.
Okay, that's interesting because I thought she was mentoring or talked to Hitler.
He read her extensively. See, these people that
That's
die are still very influential, including
yes.
Crowley is very influential. He was very influential in the way Hollywood was set up, founded, and was literally Babylon. The glitterati, the sex parties, the drugs, that all has been going on since the inception of Hollywood, which was the new Babylon for like Kenneth Anger and these people. So even though she was dead, he obviously had her works. And Hitler, I have read somewhere that he had a copy of um, Isis Unveiled or Externalization on his bedside table. He was very into her. That's why he had a paid medium, psychic, and whoever said that he was sending groups of people to Antarctica, he was looking for the ascended masters down there. He was looking for physical people that don't exist because they're actually non human intelligence. So thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Dory. I appreciate it.
Awesome. I think we have the story next, and then we'll get to Joseph.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Dory. Thank you for, well, everyone for sharing your knowledge. I have a question, and I also have a comment in terms of the war going on out there that I totally agree. And I, my question has to do with the energy of blood. I've been doing a lot of reading and researching in terms of the sacrifices, of course, animal sacrifice. I'm from South America. There's a lot of a religion called Umbanda there, and they do a lot of animal sacrifices. It's said that human as well. But I also, I'm not going to go deeply into this, but I also delve into studying human sacrifices in the ancient world. Let's leave it at that. And a lot of what I'm seeing in the world right now resembles this. And so I have a very close friend who's my Dory in my life. She has done. We studied a lot of esotericism, occultism, but she delved way more than me. She's a magician, let's say, and she also channels. And recently I had a conversation with her about what's happening in the world right now and how I was reacting to seeing a lot of, especially children, wounded and dying in a certain part of the world. And I was actually telling her, I know that I'm feeding the beast. I'm getting into their realm, but I can't, it's my trigger. I can't ignore it. I can't live my life in the other side of the world pretending it's not happening. And she said to me, well, don't look at that because you're feeding loosh energy. And my question specifically, because she didn't even want to get much into that, and I've asked 3 times already, and there's not much literature for me to investigate. I was wondering what your thoughts, what your knowledge, or anyone else in the panel is of Lush energy, and how I heard you earlier talking about prayer. I'm an esoteric Christian. After going through every religion and occult practice in the planet, I have all my planets in Scorpio, so this is my shed. I went back to Christ, and I have a very, very particular esoteric relationship to Christ and Christ energy, and to the idea of the blood of Christ. But in terms of this lush energy terminology, I was wondering if you or anyone could share your knowledge on this, and if you agree that when we're looking at these things in the world, when she was mentioning that even when you cut yourself, you have a reaction to your own blood that is like a psychic sort of reaction that is very, very strong, and certain entities feed if you're watching like gory horror, if depending on the reaction that you're having to the blood, and that's also something that happens in the rituals. The sacrifice is not just to feed the blood of the animal, but the presence. It's a whole ritual to the person asking for the favor has to be there because there's a reaction to all that blood, and that in a way we are being pushed to have this reaction when we're watching I don't know, even wars, violence, gory movies. We are being without our consent pushed to having these reactions to feed these entities. So that was my question. What do you know about that, and if you can help me find something else to read about it.
Well, um, I think that uh, it's important, just like we limit, if we want to be healthy, we limit our time being sedentary, and we go outside and we at least walk. We move our bodies. We fuel our bodies with good food. We keep our minds stayed on God, and all that is beautiful, all that is marvelous and wonderful, and that we have to be grateful for in this world, helps a lot with keeping those, the entities that feed on the loosh or whatever. That's, psychic vampires are said to feed on loosh. I've met people that literally suck the energy out of a room, and I think we've all met people like that, and whether they know that they're doing it consciously or not, I don't know. But as far as blood goes, let me just say this first. First of all, uh, back in the Garden of Eden, God comes walking along because in Eden, God walked with us. So after Eve was tempted, we were left here with the whatever else was here, right? Because of that transgression. And actually, it was the transgressions of the Watchers that even influenced some stuff in the New Testament. So in Genesis, God's walking through the garden, and he knows what's happened to Abel. So he comes upon Cain and says, "Where is thy brother?" And this is one of the famous scriptures that people twist up. Cain says, "I don't know. I am not my brother's keeper." But everyone's changed it to, "I am my brother's keeper." Well, he didn't keep his brother very well, because he hit him over the head with a rock because he was jealous, because Abel was giving God his best, and Cain was shirking on his offerings. Okay, and he got jealous and hit his brother, and then God tells Cain, "Abel's blood cries out from the ground. Blood has frequency, blood has energy. God knew what had happened because he heard Abel's blood crying from the ground. That's the importance of the blood. And we have been given, someone gave their blood for us to protect us. And that is our counter to what they do with the blood to raise the dark energy, to open portals, to bring in demons. Thank you.
Loved it. Thank you so much.
All right. Hiker gal, jump in.
Yeah, I'm going to expand upon what Dory said about Lush. Let me give you a really good example because I have been subjected to it numerous times. Think of, how Dory was saying about keeping ourselves healthy and exercising and everything. Well, it is proven that when you are exercising and treating your body well, you feel really good. You have these endorphins running through your body and you feel elated and happy and feel so good that you want to continue that feeling. So you continue to treat your body well, you continue to go to the gym, you continue with all of this routine and you feel elated. That is Lush. It's that feeling that you get when you work out, when you eat well, when you're treating your body very well. The opposite of that is dark Lush, and what that is when NHI are subjecting you to abject terror in whatever fashion or form, because that is their happy emotion that they siphon off of us. So that is what Lush is. It works both ways. And so I hope that's a better understanding of what Lush is for you.
Yeah, thank you. And
That's great.
I'm sorry, but I have to say that I'm in my treadmill right now, just for the record.
We all understand. We've all been there. All right. Joseph, what you got, Joseph?
Hey, everybody. Yeah, actually, what you were talking about before, was it the story giver?
Yeah.
Yeah, Loosh, right? It seems to be that's what it's all about. Dory, you were talking earlier in another space I was in about all of this magic and your history in it, and how you have experience with entities and that knowledge of aliens and how they are worked into this hierarchical structure of entities that we are aware of currently. And on every level, no matter where you look at it, on this whole esoteric picture that we're kind of puzzling together, Loosh keeps on coming into it. So Loosh has to be generated by us, right? So what is your knowledge of why entities of such fabulous power and technological advancement in those cases would be interested in us at all? Where are we generating this energy from? So Hiker Gal, you just talked about how there's higher and lower forms of Loosh. So it's generated energy. You could also say that higher emotions like love is also Loosh, possibly for some other entities, right? It's just a form of energy that we are producing, and probably, I believe, from the soul, right? So there also has to be, somewhere, I don't know if you've investigated it with yourself, but in all of your education and knowledge and practice in the magic realm that you have now rejected, there must be secrets, right? That they don't even tell those people. Now you have turned to Christ, and so you have followed a different path. But there must be something they do not want us to know, and some power in us, because why would they be interested in our energy at all if they have all of this? You know, they're getting something from us. That means that there's something that we have that they don't. So it's a very generalized question. You can take it anywhere you want, I suppose.
So it really goes back once again to the Watchers. Okay, the Watchers, before they decided to leave their first estate, before they decided to rebel and go after the women so that they could mate with them, they knew that because they were part of the divine council of God. God has a council, and they were part once of the divine council. So they were privy to classified information from God. And they knew before he formed us what his plan was, and that he was going to form us just a little less than the angels. Um, and that we would be the ones, if you look at Psalm 82 with a concordance, human beings, us, are the ones who are going to judge the Elohim. We will judge the angels and the little g gods. And oh, they really wanted to mess that up. God loves us, he created us, and we were so special to him. I'm not sure why, because he created us in his image. It's his breath that went into the clay to animate it. Okay, the breath of God is what gave us life. So our essence, our souls, that loosh, if you will, and I think Hiker Gale's correct. There's a dark loosh, and there's the bright. And people with bright signatures, they tend to attract sort of odd things anyway, a lot of times. And so, shoot, I just lost where I was. So, oh yeah, going back to the Watchers and the sexual aspect of things, the angels were created without gender. So here's another thing that the negative side has wanted to copy is genderless people. And they're accomplishing that in a really horrific movement right now. And I think that you guys understand what I'm talking about. And they've particularly went after the children with this androgynous thing, right? Because Baphomet is androgynous, but the angels started out as androgynous, and we could procreate. We were given they can't create. They can't create. We were given the ability to come together with another human and create the ability to create life through our bodies that God gave us, these almost magical, right? Magical abilities. And the angels were jealous. A certain number of the angels were jealous, and they wanted to know, what is it like to have this experience? And so they made a deal and they left. So it kind of goes back to that, once again, is that we were created with the ability to create. And I will give you a statistic that's really, really sad. About 400,000 people a day globally die, about half of them from accidents, heart attacks, disease, et cetera, et cetera. The other half, the other 200,000, died in the womb. And that is what I said. One of the things the Watchers taught to mankind was to take out life from the womb. The Watchers taught humans how to abort babies.
Right. And that would be the most innocent energy that they harvest, I suppose.
Well, you know, they have
Now,
satanic abortion clinics now. It's a combination plate. You can go in and have your abortion as a sacrifice to Lucifer. I follow them on Facebook just because I need to look at some of these things, although it repulses me to no end, but that exists.
right. Yeah, it's almost horrific, so horrific that you can't really immerse yourself in it too much because it's traumatizing. If you have the ability to empathize that much, then it can be very traumatizing. Um, so the NHI, they're harvesting, and I've heard reports that they harvest. For instance, Amy gave a story that a gray walked up to a hybrid and then had commanded the hybrid to masturbate in front of him, and then stared at his eyes and extracted that sexual energy. Right?
Actually, Joseph, real quick, that was actually a
Sure.
mantid feeding off
Oh,
of a
that was
high.
a mounted.
And
Oh,
so where there's this idea, well, first of all, to Dory's point, they're still sexless. You know, you could sometimes feel the energy of them being a male or female, but until you get to the hybrids, they're still not able to create themselves. Assuming, and my working theory is that these mantids on down are just hybrid creations of these fallen baby gods that we've been talking about all night. They're still sexless. They can't create without us. That's why they're using human women right now, with women who are in this room right now, using human women to create their hybrid race. And that was a hybrid that the mantis was feeding off of. And there is some idea that because these hybrids actually put off more psychic energy than we do, that they're actually a more perfect food. So we might be getting replaced in every single way that we are beneficial to them.
yeah, and a more perfect prison for our souls to actually be reborn in, possibly as well. So I wanted to go ask you about like the bifurcation, the purpose of the hybrids, but there's a couple more hands up, so I'll just let that go.
Oh, you're good,
Hey,
Joseph. Go
can I
stay
give
up.
you guys some good news? Like, can I throw something down that maybe none of you have ever heard before, but it really is highly entertaining, actually? All right.
Absolutely.
So there is a marriage supper of the Lamb. When this is over and the entities the bad ones get locked up again, and it's a new earth, a new Eden. There is another restart coming, and it is going to be lush. And think Eden, right? Um, so there's a special supper celebration, and what is on the menu is very interesting. It's in a few verses in Ezekiel and Deuteronomy. Leviathan, who is a very powerful sea monster, but definitely non-human entity, okay, of great magnitude. And God busts Leviathan in pieces, and we partake of these entities, of our winning this battle. Our table is being prepared. And so not only is God going to take care of them and lock them up again, we will actually be like manna from heaven. It will be of what remains of them that will be our celebratory feast. And I think that's just the greatest news ever because they run around eating things. I'm going to find all the scripture that's related to that,
Okay, or
Fringe,
you
because
back
it's
this up
big.
somewhere. You got to back this up. I'm going to vomit right now.
It makes us sick because we're thinking of these things in a horrific way, but it's actually, they're transformed. It's a transfiguration happens again with them for us, like Christ was transfigured for us. So God takes what is bad and turns it good. I know, I guess the idea of us, but we have to think of it on a higher level, that we're blessed with the bounty of vanquishing. We take the spoil. Maybe I should just call it that. To the
Yeah.
victor go the spoils.
Let's stick to the metaphysical side of that. Maybe they'll go down a little easier. The story, I think you maybe wanted to jump in on this conversation before we get to Chrome.
I wanted to add to Jason's question of why us, because I did spend a lot of time in my esoteric and spiritual practice in this, and I mean, I don't want to Christianize anyone, but we are the only creatures that have both a physical experience, actually a physical, an intellectual, and a spiritual experience. Animals, as far as we know, have the physical, and entities, even angels, they only have the spiritual. They don't have the experience of the body or the ego. And so that makes us very powerful if we were in touch with that, with the crossover of those powers. And that's why I mentioned Christ, because Christ is a very clear example of life on this earth as a human, but being very aware of the unity with the divine. And that's basically Christ energy. And that's why he's the way, because he is able, even just looking at the life experience, he's showing that he's able to be a body, an ego that was bullied, betrayed, he was poor. He goes through all the stages of the worst things that can happen in a human life. He's tortured, he goes through a slow death, but he is so aware of this unity with the divine, and that he's not just Jeshua of Nazareth, he's not just this body and this ego, and he's so in touch with all, the spiritual experience through the body, that he is able to heal, that he is able to transcend and withstand all this suffering, knowing that he can even transcend death and reach this eternal life after death, because he's also aware that the bridge for this is unconditional love, compassion, and forgiveness. And so if you live your life, this physical life, in those portals of compassion, unconditional love, forgiveness, and unity, and you are able to unify your ego, your um, um, your spirit and your body, your Father, Son, Holy Spirit, in this experience, in this life, you become aware of that power that a lot of entities don't have, and that they feed off, or they want, or they're trying to hack as we speak. Um, and so I just wanted to jump into that when we talk about why us, because we were born conditioned to think that we're sinners, and that we're the bottom of the bottom, and that we're no good unless something or someone chooses us, or we're famous, or we're special, and we are not aware of that power that we are born with and that we die with. That's all I wanted to share.
Thank you for that. Joseph, did you want to have a follow-up on that, or should we go to Chrome?
No, we can go to Chrome.
All right, Chrome, welcome back to the space. Go ahead.
Yes. Sorry, let me turn on my TV real quick. What I wanted to just kind of backtrack here a little bit was about the fall of Eden and Adam and Eve. So one important thing is that when we talk about sexual energy, we have to remember that Adam was created obviously by the voice and frequency of our higher power, God, and Eve was created by the rib of Adam. So they initially did not have any kind of intercourse. Now, the only entity that was in there that wanted to put the Kundalini inside of Eve to change the perspective of what God had, he had to have sexual intercourse with her. When he did that, several things happened. One was the splitting of our left and right hemisphere, which created blue and red. Originally in the Garden of Eden, our brains were merged. They were hemisynced, being the color purple. That's why when Christ was crucified, they put the color purple on him, signifying who he is and who he was by the color purple. As sometimes you might see Donald Trump wear a tie that's purple, representing, the kingdomship of our Almighty God. So the sexual thing, this deviant thing, came from the enemy, and the enemy installed this into Eve now. So when she was impregnated, the disease that was passed on to Cain and Abel was the splitting in the splitting of the brain, as to why we see the blue and red all the time, whether it's in politics, whether it's the Leviathan agenda, or whether it's the Rome agenda. They use the color blue and red. You see it all the time. Pepsi, you see it in your football stadium. So when you look at the stadiums, what are there? They're power generators for Lush. What are they using this energy that they get from concerts? What are they using all these millions of people who go to these stadiums? One interesting thing about stadiums is if you go to the Kansas City Chiefs stadium and you type in the longitude and latitude of that place backwards, it takes you to the Ukraine, which is their portal. Now, the interesting thing about portals is that with this ongoing spiritual war underground, secret cities as like the Emerald City, Mars, Valhalla, or Ranrock were torture, human trafficking, breeder programs, and experiments using portals and stargates in other realms and dimensions. So going back to Cain and Abel, whenever Cain killed Abel, obviously his blood was speaking the frequency, but also one of the important things that also happened is God put a marking on the front of Cain's head so that everybody would know what he did. But if anybody has ever listened to Jesse Saboter, who has the only woman that has an affidavit with the Supreme Court, being a witness and a testament to all the things that she was originally supposed to be one of the original 5 mothers of darkness, and her story is very interesting for those who want to know in depth about the quadrants, about the people who are really in charge, and the thing about it is, in her account and in her affidavit, she talks about werewolves and vampires, which are real people. Werewolves come from the lineage of the bushes. The bushes have the ability to transform themselves into wolves and literally destroy children into pieces. Now, with the vampire situation is when Cain killed his brother, God put that mark on his head, but also gave him the vampire disease, which is the hemoglobins, where they don't, their skin is basically transparent. So when you see, vampires are real, vampire bars exists, these things are real. But that's one thing about Cain is God took away his red hemoglobins and made him into a vampire. So this is where we get the vampire lineage from. This is where Johnny Depp, in his vampire clubs and everything else, he's also a living vampire himself. So it's, interesting when y'all guys are talking about this lush energy, because once we split our brains into two, then it's much easier for these entities to take advantage of either your blue or your red side, depending on which one you use more, instead of it being hemisynced into one. So when they install their etheric or esoteric implants within us, which can be through the chakra system, which they utilize kind of like the rainbow, which is, obviously red, blue, yellow, green, purple, and so on and so forth, they connect themselves to this. So they have various forms of feeding, not only etherically, but esoterically, but also through our adrenaline glands. So this fear mongering thing, when you guys are, this constant Halloween, there's always fear. These things are meant so that we continue feeding these things unconsciously. If they can't get it through an implant, if they can't get it through their etherical or esoterical implants, they'll get it through the, through the adrenal glands, the fight or flight. As to why, the last thing I wanted to mention is the last thing that the enemy did, which was one of the most intelligent things, is he created a reptilian brain within our own system so that now we have fight or flight. And everybody right now is in a state of fight, meaning that the demiurge and all these other creatures, they're just constantly just feeding and just feeding and feeding, regardless of, the human not being aware. That's why the enemy did those things. He impregnated Eve so Cain would kill his brother.
Okay, I gotta hold up here for just a
Dory,
moment.
real Dory.
I'm
I
done.
have yet. I'll let you finish in a minute. I just have to hop in
Okay.
here on the.
All right, you guys, sorry I muted everybody. Before we get to Dory, who I think wants to push back a little bit on Chrome, which is fine, I just want to ask Mimi to please be respectful while you're on the speaker panel. There's no reason to laugh at Chrome. We're just listening to what he has to say and listening to his input, and there's no reason to laugh at him. You're welcome to, present your own ideas once we call on you, but please don't laugh at him while he's speaking, or anyone else, as long as you're up on the speaker panel. Thank you. Go ahead, Dory. There's a little delay. So Dory, you can speak now. Hiker gal.
I'm here.
I don't know what we got. We lost Dory. Maybe your mic might be closed, Dory.
Am I still muted?
No, I got you, Joseph.
No, I'm done.
Back. So Dory, everything you just said we did not hear because you were muted. Go ahead. Still muted, Dory. I don't know if you're on a PC.
I can't hear you, Fringe. I'm gonna have to drop.
Okay, so Dory's gonna drop. Hiker gal, I'm not sure who was next, if it was Daniel or Mimi. Do you know?
I believe it was.
Could I speak to the story's point, if it
Ignacio.
all possible?
If you would, Ignacio, real quick. Hang on just a minute, because we actually have Dory back. So we're Dory, go ahead and speak. Go ahead, Dory.
Okay. I'm sorry, when the room got muted, I didn't realize that I got muted too. And then when you came on, I couldn't hear you. So I'm back. I just haven't found any linguistic or other materials, ancient texts, or ancient myths, or even the societal beliefs or what they knew back then that point to Eve having sexual relations with the Nakash. Now, did that happened though with them when they came down, when the Watchers came down in Genesis 6? So that actually, the procreation between the angels that came down and humans didn't happen till Genesis 6. So when a man and woman were created and they had their first two children, Cain and Abel, they had that through conventional intercourse, okay? And Seth the same way after Cain died. And there's also a legend, it's a mythology that's a modern mythology, that when Cain was sent to the land of Nod, that was the land of vampires. And I haven't been able to come up with any linguistic, textual, or mythological, sociological, ancient support for that theory either. So I just wanted to state that there's not any receipts for that. Thanks.
Awesome. Chrome, we'll give you maybe about 30 seconds to respond to Dory if you like. If not, we're going to go to the hands.
No, I duly respect everybody in this room, and we're just here to, express our individual knowledge and, what I might know, some other people might not know, but that's the blessing of being in a room like this, that everybody gets to express their opinions, because obviously they're all opinions at the end of the day, unless we're historically going to go with facts, where we have going to museums and traveling the world and stuff like that. But no, that's everything. I highly appreciate, there's no offense or anything. I absorb everything that everybody has to say, and I appreciate everybody. So thank you.
And we appreciate you, Chrome. Thank you very much. We'll go to Mimi and then Daniel.
Okay, thank you. And hello, and thank you for letting me speak in your space. Hello to everyone. Hey, everybody. Anyways, I just want, as the gentleman, I'm gonna call you young blood because you're young. I know you're a gentleman. If y'all go back to the planets, you go back to the sun, the moon. The sun is number one, the moon is number two, then six is Mars, and then seven is Saturn. Like, go back to the planets. If you want to get in there, you can do that type of stuff. I'd be working hard to be a troll. Um, Here's what I have to say. Just turn the country red. What's the problem? I don't give a god damn. Just turn the country red. Just do it. I don't. Just do
I
it.
just told you not to laugh at everybody, and I'm laughing at you, Mimi. So I
No,
will.
just turn it red. What's wrong? Like, what? Just turn it red.
All right. Do you have anything on the
Let
top?
Orange Man do it, because Orange Man is the sun.
Do you
A
have
lot
any?
of y'all joke about Trump. He's the sun. He's number one. The moon is number two. And then y'all forgot about Jupiter and Neptune. Neptune is number 8. Hold on. Where is Elon Musk? And then we got Saturn. Like,
Goodness.
do the in-betweens. The sun is number 1. Moon is number 2. Neptune is number 8. Saturn is right. Saturn is a sister. Saturn is like a daughter of the moon. Because Elon can't get around Saturn. Because Saturn, what does Saturn got around it? It got a disk. Because imagine if Elon go up there and like get to the moon. He can't get to the moon because Saturn right there. Saturn remind me of sanitary napkins. I don't know, administration. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. Hey, ladies, you're supposed to laugh. I wish I was on that stage yesterday at the MSG. I was like, no, Elon was like, yeah, she's right. I can't get around Saturn. Me and Elon, we would be friends. But anyways, a little bit of laughter. Y'all supposed to laugh, but you don't.
Yeah, I'm laughing, Mimi. Thank you for
Okay.
the
That's
laugh.
it. That's all I
It's
want to say. Just turn the country, turn North America red. That's it. I don't give a fuck. Fuck them all. Just turn it red.
America Red. Let's
Thank
go
you.
to Daniel. Thank you, Mimi. It was a good laugh. I appreciate it. Daniel, what you got?
Hey everybody. I was just wondering what you guys think of like reincarnation and like the 144,000 and like star seeds coming to the earth. Like what's your thoughts on all that?
Oh, Daniel, you definitely do not want to hear from me on those topics. So
That's what I wanted to
I
ask.
would love to talk about that, but I don't want to overdo the space.
No, well, cuz
let's go to Dory. Do you want to answer that question for Daniel? And just to give everybody a little bit of a heads up, we are going to be winding down here. We want to be respectful of Hiker Gal's time and Dory's time and not go too long. We've been going since what, 3:30, so 3.5
Oh,
hours. So
wow.
that's what
Yeah, so and I'm actually going to have to take my dogs out here for a minute. So after I say this, I'm going to drop to listener and continue to listen to the space, but I won't be able to speak for a few minutes because I'm going to be losing my good signal. So, but I'll still be able to hear. I don't
bringing
want
me
to touch.
on. I'll just keep
I
listening.
I don't want.
Thanks.
I'll just keep listening. I don't want to touch reincarnation right now. But somebody mentioned the 144,000 earlier too. That is a very very misunderstood thing. It is a very specific thing that God does with a certain number of people that have very specific parameters. There's no guile in their mouths. They have never known a woman ever. Okay. No guile in their mouths. They've never lied or spoken untoward. towards anything. So it's a special group for a special place in time. They actually are also sometimes called um, the Daughters of Zion, give birth to this group, and it's specific to Yahweh's peculiar people. It's a Jewish thing. And so there's even religions, modern religions, that have taught people that if you're a really good whatever flavor it is of group, okay, it is one in particular that tells you that, if you live right and follow their doctrine, that you'll be one of the 144,000. I'm here to tell you that God has designated them for a special purpose. I'm not going to go into it right now, but he always preserves a remnant. And I assure you, it's a multitude more than 144,000. So just skip them for a minute. They have a special job, and it all comes from 12 of the 12 tribes of the original tribes. So just if you think regular people are part of that, just kind of toss that aside right now, because the remnant will be bigger, and we are God's people. So thank you. And I'm going to drop to listener now so I can walk my dogs. Thank you for the space. I really, really appreciate it. And I'll just drop to listener.
Dory, I know you're dropping,
Yes.
so I don't want you to miss my words, but you were phenomenal today. I'm glad that the community finally got to hear your story. I know that Dory did try to speak in a couple of other spaces, and she was just ignored or shut down. This is the stuff that this community does not want to hear. So I'm just super excited that me and Hiker Gal could give you a space. You could see there were a lot of people interested, tons of questions, Dory. We need to hear from you. So make sure you stick around UFO Twitter. I know Game has a great community, but we need you here, Dory. So, try to split your time between the two of us. We very much appreciate you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is where I need to be for right now because, I often wondered why I was allowed to have the time in my life that I did in the 25 years that I was practicing magic and witchcraft and the occult. Um, it's because a time was coming where I had a transformation. I'm certainly not going to compare myself to Paul, Saul of Tarsus, but he had quite a because he killed Christians, right? And God called him, and he tried to run away, but eventually he was shown signs that he knew, and so I just yeah, I need to be here, Fringe. Thank you for giving me an opportunity tonight. I really, really appreciate it. It's a very anxious thing for those of us to come out and start speaking for some of the very first times, and because of being called a lunatic and whatever else. So your people in here, all of you have been really wonderful, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, Fringe. And you've got me now. I know that there's someplace here that I'm supposed to be. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Hiker Gal, and everyone that asked questions and spoke. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dory. Hiker Gal, I know we are winding it down. Where's Daniel? I'm going to speak very briefly to Daniel. I think he said he was going to drop down to listener. So here's what I think about reincarnation and star seeds very quickly. I'm not convinced that reincarnation is real. I think it's possible. I'm not taking it off the table. There are some indications that the very early Christians believed in reincarnation. I can tell you my husband was raised Orthodox Jew, and he was raised to believe in reincarnation. So is it possible? I think it's possible. I won't take it off the table. But what I do know is that the so-called aliens manipulate us when it comes to reincarnation. So people like Ted Rice have seen past life memories downloaded right into abductees' brains, convincing them that they were, so and so in a past life. And if you look at Malonga's study as well, so there is a lot of research and abductees who've been under regression who remember being downloaded with information. So it seems like at least abductees can be repositories for memories of aliens and fake memories and memories of other people's lives. And then we become convinced that this is a past life, and it may or may not be. There might not be any truth to it at all. Or maybe there is some truth to it. I don't know. But I do always like to make sure people understand that a lot of it is lies, regardless. When it comes to star seeds, um, is it possible that there's a phenomenon of souls from outside of Earth, which is what star seeds usually believe they are, coming to Earth, to save humanity and save our consciousness and ascend us to 5D? I suppose it's a possibility, but again, this is another lie that is propagated by the negative NHI. They want to convince us that we're star seeds and that the reason we're being snatched out of our beds at night is because it's just our star family and we signed a pre-birth contract for to get abducted. So again, it's a lot of propaganda. Does that mean that there's absolutely zero truth to any of this? It doesn't. It just means that the aliens use propaganda to convince us of a lot of lies. So I just want to leave that on the table for everyone to consider, and we will welcome Red Panda. I think Mimi was actually first, but you know what, Mimi? Since you're the comedian, we're going to close it out with you. So let's go to Red Panda, and then we'll close it out with Mimi.
Hello, I'm excited to go back and listen to this. I didn't get to catch it live. I think Dory's awesome. I love game tech. But I wanted to talk to you, Fringe, real quick. And I know you're closing down, but I just wanted to get your what do you think? There's kind of a little bit of the invasion doom. I don't know, not whistleblower, but like we had Nick Pope, Science Bob, Steve Bassett. These conversations, these backroom conversations about like some impending event, seems to have percolated up a lot more this week. I'm just curious on your take on all that.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good closer before we get to Mimi. So, man, I was given this information not too long ago, maybe several weeks now. And then actually, Red Panda, we did a YouTube with you, Ulrich, and Tupa, and I think we discussed even a community member who has heard this rumor that the NHI are coming back to watch the end of the world, and there's nothing we can do about it, right? So that was a little piece of information that came out maybe a year ago in July. The new information I got was just new to me. It wasn't new, to some people in the community or new to the intelligence community, because I'm now aware of people who have been made aware of this about 2 years ago. So this where I got the information from will never be exposed, but the information is that this James Webb telescope has spotted something out there that is actually directing itself toward the planet, and that there's going to be some type of extinction level event. And yeah, and that we have 9 to 14 years to live. So that's where we're at. I do like to remind everybody that this is NHI messaging, and we can't trust them. We just can't trust them. So could this be happening? Look, I've been waiting for the pulse shift since I was 15 years old. A lot of abductees and experiencers get a lot of cataclysmic earth change visions. If you just look at David Jacobs' work, and even speaking to Amy, Abductee Journal, they're actually putting up this propaganda on the screens, and playing it for us over and over and over again. And they want us to believe that there's a cataclysm coming, and that once that cataclysm or some type of chaos is finished, that they're going to arrive as our saviors, and we're all going to live in some peaceful type of bliss with the mantids, in charge of everything. So, there's just a lot of pieces out there. I did hear that. Well, I'm going to leave it there. But
But
yeah,
it's interesting though, right? It's like those names I mentioned, it's becoming more and more in the mainstream. And again, I'm not saying to change your life or anything, people listening, but we did do a super epic 5-hour stream where we just went through everyone's kind of allusions to it. And even Lou has kind of been talking about it kind of a little more openly and stuff now. And yeah, Science Bob, Nick Pope, Bassett, I maybe would even throw in there. It was like in a 3-day period, all these other people started coming out and being like, I heard this behind the scenes too. I thought of you.
yeah, it's almost like somebody I don't know. I don't know if somebody gave permission. So what happens is we get this information and we don't want to be cut off from other information, right? So it's really easy to say, hey, if you pass this on to the wrong person or whatever, you're out of the cone of silence circle. And so these secrets are kept for a very long time. And I understand why they're kept, because if you don't keep the secret, you're not going to get any more secrets.
And it ties into the stuff I'm always talking about, right? When I'm looking at this past week, the first one I see was Lou's Twitter space, where he kind of brings it up, and it seemed like after that, all these other people started kind of saying their piece. But people have been saying it for a few years now, but there were just so many in a short period of time.
Well, I think that Lou right now is your face of disclosure, right? And I think that there definitely has to be some permission there for what can be discussed and when. So, yeah, it's super interesting that the entire world of UFO Twitter now knows that we might have an extinction level event coming within 9 to 14 years. Hiker Gal, your mic was open.
I was going to say that the most I don't know, informative post was Science Bob's that I was reading. I haven't read all of it, but it was from what I was I didn't read all of it, so I just read probably the top, I don't know, quarter of it, and I haven't been able to get through the rest of it because I was busy today. But I think that one is pretty informative. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest going and reading it. I think there's some merit to that.
Yeah, so now that this little dirty little secret is out in the open, we should talk about it more, Red. We should talk, have a space on it and kind of what you did
We
on that.
should. Let's do it.
Yeah, we should. Man, can you imagine the actual ontological shock of knowing, if you think you know? I mean, the people I'm getting the information from, they think they know that this is a knowing, like it's going to happen, and they've experienced ontological shock themselves. To the point of, hey, go live your life. We have 14 years left or 9 years left, or people have different time frames for whatever might be happening. But again, you know, at least some of that has to come from non-human intelligence. They're not just getting that on their own. We have people like Jason. Jason was here for a hot minute. Jason saying, and we have Steve saying that the old gods are coming back. And I'm sorry, Jason's actually saying that the NHI are coming back for their stuff. So the stuff is out there. And now Science Bob has actually cracked the cone of silence, which is fascinating because, he he toes the line. He very much believes in his oath and not giving out classified information. And so he put that in a hypothetical or a book. What did he do, Red? He put it in a fictional book
Yep.
type thing. So, yeah, they're telling us that they think something is coming, or are they just like with Dodie or any information we get from the intelligence community, is it an 80-20? It's a lot of truth, but some lies. We just don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw that King Milk for Harassment Archive post about Disclosure Mike, but I've never seen and it's basically his spiel about this exact thing, that like something's coming, blah blah blah, and it had like I think like 200 and something likes, but like 400 and something bookmarks, which I've never seen a ratio like that on one of these things. It's yeah, I'm curious who's going to be the next person to say something. You know what I mean?
I'd be looking to lose surrogates probably for some kind of leak. So, that's just what I would be thinking, but what do I know?
Yeah, we will
Hey,
do that space.
yeah, let's do it. Let's see. Hiker Gal, what
Okay,
that was.
no.
Mimi. Oh, I forgot Mimi. Mimi, you're closing it out, and once you're done, Mimi, we will thank everyone for coming.
No, here's what I want to talk about. My buddy. My buddy is he's artistic. right? Y'all ever watched that movie where damn, what was it? I can't remember the movie, but when they was able to paint the child, artistic children, Tony Braxton got one, whatever. It's something about the brain, and it's like they think out of the box. They don't even think in a square or a circle, right? It's an awesome movie. I can't remember, but you can watch it over the holiday weekend. And one of the actors, damn, what's his name? But anyways, it's a movie where they took the little girl, and they was like, she's crazy, and she was able to draw herself out of. She drew herself in the wall. Y'all remember that movie? It's like The Cards or something like that. Well, let me tell y'all something. A lot of y'all didn't know it, but Elon is artistic. He's different, like me. He just
Uh,
think out of the box. He's different.
Thank you, Mimi. I agree. I think.
No,
Oh, sorry about that, Mimi. I agree. I think he is different. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much for showing up. Thank you so much to Dory and to everyone who came up and spoke and shared a story and contributed to the space. Thank you for listening. And we look forward to some more. Hiker Gal, what do you got to close it out?
I wanted to share one of the mitigation techniques for those that maybe still looking on ways to help mitigate the experiences that we have. I shared one not too long ago, like about 10 days ago, where I have found that, and we've talked about this before, like about a month, maybe 8 weeks ago, about having your TV on during the night. And I have found that it's very helpful. Mine is on this show called Highway to Heaven. It ran from 1984 to 1989. So it kind of brings me back to all of the 80s fashions. That was my jam. And along with that, if you're doing that, have it at a volume where you can hear it just ever so slightly. And if you don't like that, then you can have it on mute, but at least play some type of music in the background, preferably, like you said, Fringe, either Christian or worship music. I have mine on worship music, and it has really cut down on quite a few things. So I just wanted to share that as one of the mitigation techniques before we close it out.
Yeah, awesome, Hiker Gal. That's one of the best ones. And that was actually given to me by a physicist who's also an abductee. And he was just explaining, they snatch us the most easily out of, I think it's delta sleep, but
Yes.
they
Hmm.
they have the easiest. I think sometimes REM sleep as well. But
Yes.
and those that the trick of keeping your television or worship music, and the other thing was country music. It just distracts our brain, and it has our brain actually paying attention to this low level sound, and it actually just keeps us distracted and helps their technology from not being able to lock onto our brains, which is what they need to do to paralyze us and snatch us out of our beds. So thanks for reminding everyone of that tip. And if you're having any kind of an emergency and you feel like you're going to have to stay up all night, or you're in a crisis, which is where they like to put us, just try it out. Leave your TV on. Nothing that's horror or anything crazy. Not even any gangster movies or anything like that. Just something really mild. And make sure you can hear it. And it does work. You would be surprised. And oh, I'm sorry. You also need to leave a light on when you're doing that. You'd be surprised at how many abductees actually sleep with the television on. It's actually kind of sad because we can't actually get any good restful sleep. while that's happening, but a lot of times avoiding the visits, is a trade-off, that we accept. So thank you so much, Hiker Gal. All right, we're going to say goodnight. Thank you again to everyone who joined. And until next time.
Thank you, everyone.